Book 5 of the Odyssey, here in the Fagles translation entitled Odysseus, Nymph, and Shipwreck. Odysseus enters the chat. He's finally here, which I'm sure creates the big question of why did we spend 4 books with Telemachus and not jump straight into Odysseus? This is his story. Well, the big answer is stakes. We are setting up the stakes because the whole thing is Odysseus wants to get home. What does it mean? What does it mean to get home? We know what it means for him, but what's the kind of larger world stakes that are in the balance? It's the state of Ithaca, the stability of Ithaca, and sure, of course, of his own house, but so we get like a kind of macro and slightly more macro view of what it means for Odysseus to get home. We also introduce his family, so we get a sense of, hey, these are the people who are missing him. We meet Telemachus, we understand he's very like his parents, and he just needs to go and get, as I say, needs to go do FaceTime, needs to go get his, kind of start putting things more in motion, because the house is a bit of a powder keg, if we will. The whole palace is a powder keg because, Penelope's been found out for her little weaving trick, and the suitors are getting a little restless about that. In addition, we meet Penelope, who is so crucial a character, and so much of this story, as anybody who's been here from the beginning in book 1, we know that the first character who is spoken about in dialogue is Agamemnon. It's what's going on with Agamemnon and what happened to him when he returned. We're going to contrast it hugely with Odysseus, but the distinction is made because Agamemnon, this is the Bronze Age of Greece, the Mycenaean Age of Greece. Mycenae was therefore kind of the most powerful kingdom on the Greek mainland. That's Agamemnon. Also Clytemnestra is Penelope's cousin. So we're having these big parallels being drawn up because we want that to be there. In addition, Agamemnon's son Orestes becomes a really great comparative for Telemachus to look at because he's looking for somebody to be a more tangible example that he can follow. Part of why we send him off on those great journeys to Pylos and Sparta is so that he can meet Nestor and meet Menelaus and just get a sense of, oh, this is someone I can look at and know and meet. They are tangible in front of me and I get an idea of what I'm doing. Ismene. I believe Homer uses epiphradinsi, meaning slowing down the story to create drama and dread. Yes, he does, all the time, and especially in those first 4 books. We like having the stakes laid out for us, and then we meet Odysseus, and he gets to come in and do the, I guess you're wondering where I've been all this while. I bet you're wondering how I got in this situation. So that's important. Now so we are finally gonna meet him on Calypso's island. Now, are Helen and Clytemnestra, excuse the spelling, it's all good, sisters or also cousins. Half-sisters, because it's believed Helen is the daughter of Zeus, but Clytemnestra is the daughter of Tyndareus, who was the king of Sparta, and the Litas, who's Helen's mother's, her actual husband. So they're half-sisters. They just sort of consider them sisters. Helen, while being considered a daughter of Zeus, is still very much also treated as the daughter of a king of Sparta. So, now, this is where I say, teacher moment, put on your listening ears, we need to have a talk. And I'm putting this out here as a sort of blanket statement because we're going to be meeting Calypso. Super Orlok, finally the wacky adventures of cruel Ulysses begin. Thank you, Super Orlok. It's true. There's gonna be some funniness in this too, so don't worry. We're gonna have moments to laugh. Was it ever a negative for your child to turn up being the kid of a male god? Not really, no. It's kind of an honor, really. I guess, but you essentially treated them like your own child. The children of gods, whoever their human father, if you will, or stepfather was, they were always the father that stepped up, if you will, when they're good. If they're not, usually problems arise. But good question, Hamatus. Okay, so we're meeting Calypso. Now, while my reactions to the Calypso songs in Epic at least have not released yet, let's get this out of the way. Calypso, number 1, is a character I don't like, just because of her character. Let's understand something from the jump here. What Calypso does to Odysseus on her island is abuse. Point blank period, there's no way around it, it's abuse. She holds him hostage for 7 years, and he tries to tell her no in every respect. She does not listen, she does not care, she holds him against his will. It is highly implied that she essays him in addition to everything else during those 7 years. It's abuse. And while someone may, I don't think they would make the argument, oh, but Odysseus says yes to some of whatever trysts they may have, It's under duress. He can't leave. He literally cannot leave. He has no way to get out. It's abuse. So, the reason I'm putting this forward is because, one, I am not going to dive too deep in the weeds on that. There's at least one portion here where I'm going to talk about a specific concept that is seen in narcissistic abusive hate behavior. We're going to keep it very clinical. And I do want to say, it doesn't imply it's flat out said. Oh, yes, thank you, Game Wizard. It is pretty much said. Yeah, yes when you aren't allowed to say no does not count. The reason I'm bringing this up here and I'm making the blanket statement up front is because one thing I don't want the chat to turn into in this moment, or during this whole session, as much as a lot of us, I'm sure, and let's remember, we are all ultimately strangers here on the internet. I love you guys and I love this book club so much, but we are ultimately all kind of strangers on the internet. So we don't really know each other. I'm sure there's a good many of us who might have our own personal experiences related to some kind of abusive behavior, whatever kind it is. I don't want the chat to turn into a big trauma dumping session. And the reason I don't want that is because ultimately we are all strangers. And while that can be very cathartic for the person who's letting it out, someone else in the chat may be in a different emotional state and not prepared to handle reading that or seeing that. They may not psychologically be there yet. Everybody is in their own stage of potential recovery if they are dealing with something, right? So I don't want us to at any point have people really, just having a mental health reaction that is adverse because we're all sort of trauma dumping in the chat, right? Hence I say I'm going to keep it very clinical. We're going to be like, we're literally only going to talk about it beyond this point in kind of one situation, and it's because I very specifically want to bring up a bit of behavior. Beyond that, I would like for us, not to say that I don't want this book club to be like a safe space for everybody to be themselves and share their feelings. This is just probably not the most appropriate or safest, you could say, of places to be letting all our stuff out like that in the chat. Just by virtue of the fact we are all strangers. I'm not a mental health professional. Other people might be going through stuff. So, do you have any moderators that are able to quickly delete messages if that happens, or if you're quick on your feet yourself? I don't have moderators, but I'm going to be, during those portions, keeping a real close eye on the chat. And I don't, and is there any moderators here specifically? I don't have moderators. I've never had moderators, but I will keep an eye out. If it comes to the point that somebody wants to volunteer as a moderator, I will find a way to make you a moderator. But I don't want to put that on anybody. Yes, you will see Peg a lot more back here. So I wanted to say that now, so that everyone is okay and we understand and we get it out of the way that what's happening to Odysseus from Calypso is not okay. And the Greeks back in the day would have known it's not okay. You're happy to volunteer if you need me. Mary, on that note, can I add, you know what, while I take this moment, let me see if I can figure out, I'm going to add, I don't know what, paste the channel URL. Okay. Mary, I'm going to add you as a moderator right now, actually. Thank you so much for volunteering. I seriously appreciate this. I'm going to make you a managing moderator. I have no idea what that means, but ta-da. There we go. Mary is hereby given the power of mods, correct. There we go. We've got that straight. Excellent. But yes, I will not abuse my power. Only so much. But yes, so I wanted to say what's happening to Odysseus here on the island is abuse. It's not okay, and the Greeks back in the day would not have seen it as okay. While they likely, obviously, of course, did not have the same language that we have for a lot of these situations, they would have recognized that what Calypso is doing to Odysseus is not okay. Because he can't say no and he can't leave and he doesn't want to be there. He very explicitly says he doesn't want to. So they knew this was not good. So that's always very important. Now, we already talked a bit about Calypso in book 1 because she gets mentioned. We say that she is a daughter of the Titan Atlas. Yes, the famous one who holds the world on his shoulders. Beyond that, what we know about Calypso is actually very little. There's just not a lot of ancient sources about her. We know that she is on this island called Ogygia, or Oyiya. I believe somebody had corrected me. The G is pronounced like a Y. I'm probably going to mess that up regardless. I apologize in advance. And we know that she does not leave. Now, This is where semantics are kind of important because does not leave versus cannot leave is two very different things. And the answer is, I don't know which. Now, it's implied in later, like more classical sources, potentially that she can't leave. And anybody who's read the actual ancient Greek can tell me if there's more certainty in that. I'm bound very much by translation, and translations seem to imply and not just in the Odyssey, but in other sources, that she cannot leave. Now, Homer doesn't say that, he just makes it so it seems that she does not leave. Let's do a thought experiment to say, if she cannot leave, if we think, what would be a reason why she can't leave? Well, the most obvious answer is the Titanomachia. Her father, Atlas, sided with the Titans during the Titanomachia, and if we say that Calypso herself sided with her father, then she was on the opposite side of the Olympians, and therefore when the Titans lose, hey, maybe they banished her to that island. But that's a big question mark, because we don't really know. Which means you will get to see me when we get to Epic and those songs just sort of go, I mean, you get room to play when you're then interpreting the character later. But the thing we do have are her actions, and her actions are deplorable. There's no other way to put it, sorry. There's nothing really forgivable in any of her actions. They are awful. I've read it, unfortunately, I remember no specific details. Ismini, Mariana, Chiarici, I will have to check on that. Oh my god, yeah, if anyone, again, who has read the ancient Greek and correct me on that, please bring that to the table. I'm always here for it. Because again, I am pretty much bound by translation. I never studied ancient Greek, so I've never read them in their original language. To quote Shakespeare, suit the action to the word and the word to the action. Yes, Game Wizard, thank you. Maybe she can't swim, Doge. That's funny. All right. But we know at this point we're pretty much done with Telemachus. The first 4 books of the Odyssey are often called the Telemachia or the Telemachy, because they focus very much on Telemachus and setting up the stakes. Out of topic question, when Atlas is said to hold up the sky and Uranos was the sky personified, was he holding up Uranos or am I mixing things up? You're not mixing things up, but he's not necessarily holding up Uranos, because we also have to remember that Uranos was sort of overthrown by Kronos, his son. So it's really, he's holding up, as they would say, the vault of the sky, the world on his shoulders. So Uranos is the sky personified, but the sky is also its own thing. You'll get this a lot. We're going to actually talk about this later when we talk about rivers, where it's a river, but so, for example, Styx. Styx is the river Styx, but it's also the nymph/goddess who is Styx the river. They kind of allow for both. The Greeks like to keep you confused, really. I've heard she's trapped but can leave if she forfeits her immortality. Birchwood, I have never heard that. I'm curious as to where you heard it, and again, anybody else who has read more of the ancient sources can tell me. Holding up your dad's corpse is wild in that one context. Yeah, Game Wizard, that is wild. Both is good, exactly. The curse thing that Rick Riordan made up is actually from the Myth G. I'm assuming that's with Calypso. I've heard a bit about that. That's Rick Riordan doing his own thing, and he's got the room to play to do it. So, I mean, it makes sense. Because we just really, Calypso's a big question mark. We just kind of don't know enough about her. There's just not a lot given about her. Confusion is key. Got you, exactly. But okay, so we've set up Telemachus. We've set up Ithaca and Penelope. We've introduced the stakes. So now we gotta meet the man. So let's go into book 5, Odysseus, Nymph, and Shipwreck. Excuse me, I just dropped my my little thing here. Okay. All right. Book 5. There we go. As dawn rose up from her bed by her lordly mate Tithonus, bringing light to immortal gods and mortal men, the gods sat down in council, circling Zeus, the Thunder King, whose power rules the world. Athena began, recalling Odysseus to their thoughts, the goddess deeply moved by the man's long ordeal. Held captive still in the nymph Calypso's house. Father Zeus, you other happy gods who never die, never let any sceptered king be kind and gentle now, not with all his heart, or set his mind on justice. No. Let him be cruel and always practice outrage. Think, not one of the people whom he ruled remembers Odysseus now, that godly man, and kindly as a father to his children. Now he's left to pine on an island racked with grief in the nymph Calypso's house. she holds him there by force. He has no way to voyage home to his own land, no trim ships in reach, no crew to ply the oars and send him scudding over the sea's broad back. And now, his dear son. They plot to kill the boy on his way back home. Yes, he has sailed off for news of his father to holy Pylos first, and then out to the sunny hills of Lacedaemon. My child, Zeus, who marshals the thunderheads, replied, what nonsense you let slip through your teeth. Come now, wasn't the plan your own? You conceived it yourself. Odysseus shall return and pay the suitors back. Hold on. Game Wizard. While I do like that Homer does essentially a recap, the scene was the opening to book 1. Do we know why he chose to redo the opening but extra? Game Wizard, that's a really good question. Part of that has to do, from what I've come to understand, with the style of these epics and how they were constructed. So again, remember, this is believed to have been constructed orally. A lot of the thought on the topic, at least, and there were just certain structures and styles and little quirks of the epic poem style medium, if you will, that meant you get moments like this. You're gonna have a lot of moments, and we're gonna get even more of them here in this book specifically, where Zeus will tell something to a character and then that person goes and repeats verbatim exactly what was said to another character. We're about to get that with Hermes. So it just seems to be a quirk of the style. I was listening to an interesting lecture on Greek literature that was talking about that, because that was something I always wondered. I sort of assumed it must be part of the storytelling. I don't know how long, like, would they do this whole epic poem in one go? Would they do it in 2 parts, or like across several days like the Mousetrap or something? But it just seems to be a quirk of the epic poem style in that things get repeated. I think because we also have to remember this is poetry, repetition is something that comes up a lot in poetry. But a very good question, because it's something you wonder. There aren't too many epic poems, and certainly not in the Greek style, so it seems to be a pretty unique thing here. Creative name, since the audio was performed in song, maybe this acted like a refrain, like the Rosy Fingered Dawn theme. That's probably a good thought. Izzy, do we know who first compiled the Homer stories? Not really, as far as I know. Now, again, my knowledge is limited. Somebody can totally correct me. I know there's a lot of schools of thought on Homer, the character, and how even these stories got compiled. Like, there's the Unitarian theory, which is they do believe it was either one person or a one group of people who got together and created these stories, and then eventually they would later get written down, because we know they were supremely popular, and at some point they had to have been written down or kind of codified in a way. Or there's the other theory that it's just like it was sort of cobbled together from all sorts of different places. But it's sort of, in terms of scholarship, it's where do you stand on that debate, right? So kind of not sure. Looking at that peg, I know she's chilling in the background. Part of why she's happy with the new angle she can show off. Isn't it a Xenia violation on Calypso's part? Yeah, and trust me, she's about to get the riot act read to her a bit, so yeah. Telemachus, sail him home with all your skill. The power is yours, no doubt. Home to his native country, all unharmed, while the suitors limp to port. Defeated, baffled men. And also, let's note that what's happening here is kind of a moment also of like Athena doing the I'm sort of half asking for permission to go and interfere with the suitors who are waiting off the coast. Not quite off the coast of Ithaca. They're like, there's a tiny little island like in between, the mainland and Ithaca, and they're hanging out in a little area there to try and waylay Telemachus. Very important, they don't do it in the palace or even on the shores of Ithaca. They are doing it on the sea, because the consequences for doing it on Ithaca or in his house would be just like... Which is also why everybody can remember my Little Wolf reaction, why I went apoplectic during that song, because I was like, oh my god, no, the problems. But again, part of why they conceive their plan in the devious way that they do is they're like, oh, we'll get him when he's on the water. Athena asking Zeus for money to make her plan come about. Yeah, she's kind of saying, hey, can I have my allowance early? Because she could go interfere on behalf of Telemachus, but she's kind of just making sure it's all okay, because she understands the relative volatility of this whole situation, because we do also know, remember, Poseidon is big mad at Odysseus. He's gonna appear because he's big mad. They pulling a Caesar assassination trick. Kinda. Apoplexy was deserved. Thank you, Book Dragon. Yeah, Athena is covering her bases. She's our smart girly. And of course, as always, she's Zeus's favorite child, which is why, even though he says, what nonsense, you let slip through your teeth, it's like, girl, how could you even think I wouldn't say no? I mean, sorry, I wouldn't say yes. It's just like, Athena, my favorite. Of course I give you what you want. You mad that bothered you? No way. I see you, woman. All right. With those words, Zeus turned to his own son, Hermes. You are our messenger, Hermes, sent on all our missions. Announce to the nymph with lovely braids our fixed decree. Lovely braids, by the way, is frequently used to describe Calypso. It's one of the few real, descriptions we have of her. We just know she had great braids, which was absolutely a hairstyle that was used back in the day. Odysseus journeys home. The exile must return, but not in the convoy of gods or mortal men. No. On a lashed makeshift raft and wrung with pains, on the 20th day he will make his landfall, fertile Scheria, the land of Phaeacians, close akin to the gods themselves, who with all their hearts will prize him like a god, and send him off in a ship to his own beloved land, giving him bronze and hordes of gold and robes, more plunder than he could have ever won from Troy if Odysseus had returned intact with his fair share. Okay, so we have our first mention of them. Let's remember the Phaeacians, because we're going to meet them. We're going to spend some time with them. So again, Athena is basically, in doing all of this, also by repeating some of the suitors, Athena is also setting us up for what's going to ultimately be a violent finale in the slaughter of the suitors. That's why she's saying, forget peace, I want him coming in for blood, right? So, Scheria, this Isle of the Phaeacians, sometimes is just called Phaedra. It will be our last stop for Odysseus before he finally reaches Ithaca. It's our one little in-between pit stop. This is where he gets to tell his story. And it's one of the kind of earliest written descriptions we have of what you might call a utopia, where, we're going to meet it later. But again, saying that the Phaeacians are close kin to the gods themselves is because King Alcinous, who we're going to meet, who's the king of the Phaeacians now, is actually a grandson of, would you believe it, Poseidon. They're related to Poseidon. It's hilarious. So he's going to be heading to a place of people who are all related to Poseidon, but they do live on this island that is going to, we're going to see, be portrayed like a utopia. And they've got definitely an element of sort of magic to them when we see their ships and everything else. They are an interesting place. 20 days of water and food, how big is this raft? Yeah, I know. Odysseus channeling King Theoden. We will have peace when you are swinging from a gibbet and sport from your own crowns. I know. Let's see, Clover. Is Odysseus being given all the treasures a part of Zeus's plan or some larger destiny Zeus is stating? It's sort of part of his plan, and yet at the same time his destiny. When Zeus speaks about the future in this way, you could potentially read it as something like a prophecy. Kind of what Zeus says is what's ultimately going to happen. Let's always remember Zeus is ultimately the singularly most powerful of the Olympians. You get a little bit more of that in the Iliad, because I think he says very directly, pretty much nobody can stop me. I am the most powerful god out there. He just really is. Even the other Olympians don't stand a chance. What's with the Greeks being so unafraid of water, but then all utopias are water related? Because water is both life and fear. It is both, the sea is dangerous, it's terrifying to them because of nascent naval technology, but water is life. You need water to survive. It brings them fish and food and trade and everything else. So it's like they have a healthy respect for water. They can fear it and love it at the same time. Poseidon TSD activated. I love it. But yeah, so Clover, sorry, it's a combination of, they are sort of his plans, but it does seem to be some sort of larger destiny as well, which we'll get with when Poseidon reacts the way that he does later in this book. We will see. Utopia is a place where you don't have to be afraid of it. Runic Raptor, exactly. They really don't generally fear the sea. They also, again, we're going to meet the Phaeacians sort of in this book, but in, the next books as well, because we're going to spend some time with them. And their island is magical almost. It's a pretty wild place. It's simply because we have cool beaches. Exactly, Ismini. So his destiny ordains. He shall see his loved ones reach his high-roofed house, his native land at last. So Zeus decreed, and the giant-killing guide obeyed at once, Quickly under his feet, he fastened the supple sandals, ever-glowing gold, that wing him over the waves and boundless earth with the rush of gusting winds. He seized the wand that enchants the eyes of men whenever Hermes wants or wakes us up from sleep. So that wand, we're gonna, actually, you know what? I'll talk about it a little later, but we are gonna talk about his wand. That is the caduceus. So we'll talk a bit about that in a second. Yeah, Zeus, spoilers. Yeah, Gemizoid, there's a lot of spoilers. Homer basically kind of pulls a Shakespeare at the front of Romeo and Juliet and just spoils the whole thing for you, but then you just sit there and build anticipation. It's so great. That wand in his grip, the powerful giant killer swooping down from Pieria, down the high, clear air, plunged to the sea and skimmed the waves like a tern, that down the deadly gulfs and the barren salt swells, glides and dives for fish, dipping its beating winds in bursts of spray. So Hermes skimmed the crests on endless crests. But once he gained that island worlds apart, up from the deep blue sea he climbed to dry land and strode on till he reached the spacious cave where the nymph with lovely braids had made her home. And he found her there inside. A great fire blazed on the hearth, and the smell of cedar cleanly split and sweet wood burning bright wafted a cloud of fragrance down the island. Deep inside, she sang, the goddess Calypso, lifting her breathtaking voice as she glided back and forth before her loom, her golden shuttle weaving. Thick, luxuriant woods grew round the cave, alders and black poplars, pungent cypress too, and there birds roosted, folding their long wings, owls and hawks and the spread-beaked ravens of the sea, black skimmers who make their living off the waves. And round the mouth of the cavern trailed a vine laden with clusters, bursting with ripe grapes. 4 springs in a row, bubbling clear and cold, running side by side, took channels left and right, soft meadows spreading round where starred with violets, lush with beds of parsley. Why, even a deathless god who came upon that place would gaze in wonder, heart entranced with pleasure. Hermes, the guide, the mighty giant killer, stood there, spellbound. Hey, Montes, there are IRL caves with trees. They're quite pretty. Yeah, no, this is definitely, I mean, I say Homer, whoever compiled this, having a beautiful moment of, look how gorgeous, like, our country is. Even though, of course, Calypso's island is sort of, we don't know where. It's not necessarily Greece, it's uncharted waters. But we are creating this idea of, it's beautiful, it's lush, it's exotic, like you would want to stay there. And yet that, we're going to contrast that with how Odysseus is literally dying to get home. In all the epic poems, there basically is spoilers. It's officially called proeconomia. Thank you for writing that for me. Stating something that will happen in the future of the story. Yes, this meaning it's a big part of the epics. Again, you'll get it in the Iliad, you get it in like the Aeneid, it's all there. They love it. Spoilers everywhere. Hermes, why does she live better than I do? I mean, he's looking around going, dude, I get why you'd want to stay. But again, the contrast is that Odysseus does not want to stay. He's never wanted to stay. Oh, thank you, G. I'm glad my pronunciation was spot on. I think of my Yaya and how she would say it. I try. But once he'd had his fill of marveling at it all, he briskly entered the deep vaulted cavern. Calypso, lustrous goddess, knew him at once, as soon as she saw his features face to face. Immortals are never strangers to each other, no matter how distant one may make her home. But as for great Odysseus, Hermes could not find him within the cave. Off he sat on a headland, weeping there as always, wrenching his heart with sobs and groans and anguish, gazing out over the barren sea through blinding tears. But Calypso, lustrous goddess, questioned Hermes, seating him on a glistening, polished chair. Oh, here's a question. Clover flowers. How do all the immortals know each other? They're pretty much all related. I mean, end of the day, most of them are related somehow, but also there's only so many immortals versus the amount of humans that are on the earth, and they've all been around for so long that you just kind of run into each other. And of course, in terms of the Greeks, they pretty much isolate most of all these people to being somewhere on Greece, like the mainland or some of the islands. So they just eventually, in all these, you could say thousands of years, have all just sort of run into each other. And also, God recognizes God, or like immortal recognizes immortal. We'll just say there's aura. There's something that they all just know each other. And Hermes, of course, is pretty freaking famous. Like, Hermes is an Olympian, he's a master of the gods, he's a psychopomp, like he has all these things. So you'd recognize him. Which, give me my grandson. Marissa, great grandson. I've made that gaffe too. This is actually his great grandson. Like when Hamilton tells you off the bat, Burr shoots Hamilton, you spend the entire musical wondering how the fuck they get to that point. Exactly. It's a really, when that tool is used really well, spoiling stuff at the beginning can actually work in your favor because then you're building the anticipation and the dread or whatever feeling you're having. Very much similarly to how Phantom of the Opera opens, and we're told there's this mysterious affair of the Phantom of the Opera and there's this chandelier that's been reconstructed and that there was a disaster that happened, but we have no context for how we even got there. So the rest of the show is told entirely in flashback. Can be done really well. About Calypso's dwelling, it seems the Greek text just tells she inhabits there, in a far-off island. The rules on can she leave, cannot she, it seems there are not there. Mariana, so we got no helpfulness from the Greeks on that one. Again, yeah, I was gonna say, it's just left kind of vague. Does she leave? Can she leave? We don't know. And again, that gives people who are doing their own interpretations and spins on it room to play to try and create reasons. Or, to try and understand, why is Calypso here? Why does she just seem to not leave? I mean, my eternal joke is the same with Circe. Have you met the men of Greek mythology? I kind of don't blame her. I had Phantom gets referenced on my bingo card. There should be a bingo card for this. Phantom always gets referenced. I'm such... Homer taking sponsorships from Calypso's island tourism industry chiefs. That's really funny. Yeah, Calypso lives on a literal paradise island. Why would she want to leave beyond maybe sometimes wanting company now and again? And also, essentially, very few people, it seems, if ever come to see her because she has this ability to shroud her island and hide it from people. She literally just, gets to chill there. It's kind of her little domain. The same way with Circe on Aia is that it's really her domain. Why would she want to leave? Nobody bothers her there. Could nymphs leave their inhabitants? Pepper Fizzy, absolutely. Nymphs travel around, but they tend to kind of stay, if they're linked to a certain wood or they're linked to a river, they tend to just stay there. You could almost try and think of it like maybe that's their power base, if you will. They just like to stay there. It's kind of their place. They can absolutely travel around. They just tend not to. It's almost never a case of they can't, more they just don't want to. From what I've gathered, again, those are beloved people in the chat who have read the ancient Greek who can correct me on that. Please correct me where I make a mistake. I'm obviously very limited by translation. Rip Calypso, you would have loved being shut in with internet. She really would have, though. Can you imagine her on Netflix all day? I get it. She'd be having her own Netflix day all the time. Yes, I remember this whole exercise, the contrast being how beautiful the island is, but how Odysseus feels. We know, according to Athena, Odysseus longs to die. So this paradise is nothing to him. It's nothing. It's like it feels almost like rotten in his mouth. Like he doesn't want to be here. Since we've already planned we will do Iliad after the Odyssey, there's elements that kind of seem to harken back to some stuff that happens in the Iliad as well, where this does nothing for him when you'd think it would. A golden cage is still a cage. Maria, thank you. That is a great, exactly. A golden cage is still a cage. That's exactly what this is. It's a cage. But Calypso, lustrous goddess, questioned Hermes, seating him on a glistening, polished chair. God of the golden wand, why have you come? A beloved, honored friend. But it's been so long, your visit's much too rare. Tell me what's on your mind, I'm eager to do it. Whatever I can do, whatever can be done. And the goddess drew a table up beside him, heaped with ambrosia, mixed with deep red nectar. Ambrosia and nectar being the two kind of main food sources of the gods. Yes, they would get sacrifices and stuff from humans, but the food they seem to generally consume is ambrosia and nectar. These mythical substances, really, kind of in a way. Hermes, the guide and giant killer, ate and drank. Once he had dined and fortified himself with food, he launched right in, replying to her questions. As one god to another, you may ask me why I've come. I'll tell you the whole story, mince no words. Your wish is my command. It was Zeus who made me come, no choice of mine. Who would willingly roam across a salty waste so vast? so endless. Think, no city of men in sight, not a soul to offer the gods a sacrifice and burn the fattest victims. But there is no way, you know, for another god to thwart the will of storming Zeus and make it come to nothing. Zeus claims you keep beside you a most unlucky man, most harried of all who fought for Priam's Troy. 9 years, sacking the city in the 10th, and then set sail for home. But voyaging back, they outraged Queen Athena, who loosed the gales and pounding seas against them. There all the rest of his loyal shipmates died. But the wind drove him on, the current bore him here. Now, yes, Hermes voiced like a 1930s radio announcer, love it. I was feeling it, and I'm not great at the transatlantic accent, I try. So this moment, but voyaging back, they outraged Queen Athena, who loosed the gales and pounding seas against them. Now, we know for a fact it was mostly Zeus who sent bad storms, but then also Poseidon. I think what we're referring to here, before anybody is confused as to why the Queen Athena stuff is there, loosed the gales, pounding seas against them, there all the rest of his loyal shipmates died. That bit could be referring to Ajax the Lesser, who we famously have already talked about. Athena and Poseidon basically teamed up to wreck his shit because he pissed her off so bad. And again, you know, when Poseidon and Athena, two gods who are pretty notoriously often at odds with each other, not anything too dramatic, but they just don't really get along, they don't really vibe with each other, when they team up to take you down, you done fucked up really bad. Like, big yikes. So I think that's what he's meant to be referring to here, because obviously we're going to see later that Athena doesn't really appear too much in Odysseus' story during his initial years of adventuring, if you will. And that is why he is the lesser Ajax. Yes, and then also because he was literally smaller than the guy who was called Big Ajax, who's freaking massive. We talked more about it in one of the previous books. It might have been book 3, I think, is where I talked about like what were the differences between Big Ajax and Little Ajax, but I could be wrong. You done fucked up, Ajax! Exactly. Frenemies that love to antagonize above everything else, Athena and Poseidon. Correct. Oh, kid, I'm glad that you're here. So why is Hermes talking about lesser Ajax here? He's essentially saying, you know, people have died and he's lost people he knew, who he fought with, which would include lesser Ajax and the others. And that's, you know, Odysseus has suffered a lot. He's trying to build to having to tell her, you're going to let that Ithacan man go. And you're not going to get a choice. Hermes likes to chat. But that is a very good question, Clover. And again, this is me speculating, if only because it seems an odd thing to say they outraged Queen Athena, where it's like, did they really though? Odysseus himself, no. I mean, maybe when he did his stupid thing with the Cyclops, which again, we'll get to. But there you go. Put the Ithacan man down and no one gets hurt. I mean, this is sounding like the Xenia ritual, but with both of them being gods and knowing it. Yeah, very much. They're trading stories. This would be part of Xenia. You offer food and drink, and you trade stories what's happening. Exactly. I'm gonna ABC, because that's what I'm gonna call you when I see your handle. Uncle and niece who snipe at each other but ultimately have each other's back. The Dracologist? Yeah, that's pretty much Athena and Poseidon. I like the Hermes sass is true canon. He is traditionally a sassy dude. He very much is. It's very true. It's a little sad that I think modern interpretations kind of make that the only thing about his personality, because he's obviously a very multifaceted god and character, but it is true he's a sassy boy. Now Zeus commands you to send him off with all good speed. It is not his fate to die here, far from his own people. Destiny still ordains that he shall see his loved ones, reach his high-roofed house, his native land, at last. Again, we are pretty much quoting Zeus verbatim here. Most people say abs when they have to say it out loud. I did not think about pronunciation when making it. Oh, I missed what that was about. Did you know in the Percy Jackson show adaptation, Hermes is played by Lin-Manuel Miranda? Yes, I had heard that. It was an interesting casting choice. I saw the chatter about that. I don't really know Percy Jackson all that well. I read it, but I don't remember it. But I did see that was a casting choice. I think he'd make an interesting Hermes. I remember his casting in the His Dark Materials show, where he's quite young for the character he's supposed to be playing in that, but I actually thought he did a magnificent job. So actually, I think he'd probably do really well as Hermes. He could talk quick, he can move around, but we know Lin is a great actor, so he can bring all sorts of different flavors. Oh, good, Birchwood, you joined the Discord. Yes, there is a Discord. For those who care, you can go onto the Patreon. I think that one particular post, you don't need to pay for anything. You can absolutely just join. We're just like a nice little chaotic community in there. And sometimes you get extra little bonus stuff of after I've finished listening to a song, I'll like give quick little things about my opinion and the like. We talk a lot. How attached is Hermes to his bloodline? What Calypso is doing be considered an insult? Marissa, I mean, it's an insult mainly because if she gets told by Hermes, who's functioning as the voice of Zeus here, you're gonna let that man go, and she says no. Yo, you don't say no when you're given essentially like a royal command here, if you think about it. Hermes, in terms of his attachment to his bloodline, he doesn't seem to be the most attached. And a lot of the gods, I mean, they have many children. Children all over the place, especially the male gods. So there is that. And this is also his great-grandson. He might have probably been a little closer to his actual son, Autolycus, who is Odysseus' grandfather, and who has his own kind of interesting lore and story. So not super attached. In general, they don't seem to always be overly attached. They sort of pay attention to a degree, kind of depends, but they're not like overly attached. They're not overly paternal and maternal, if you will. Odysseus embraced Hermes' personality a lot, so I think he cares. Odysseus does truly behave like a descendant of Hermes. His grandfather, Autolycus, as a son of Hermes, even more so. Like, you guys think Odysseus is crafty? His grandfather was on another level. Like, totally on another level. And yes, I did know Nathan Fillion played him in the film, which I thought was cool. I think I've seen a clip of it, and it made me laugh. But lustrous... Oh, sorry. If Calypso were to completely refuse, would she be insulting not only Zeus but Hera as well because she's hindering him to get to his family? Sorain, good question. Yes. She would be in a lot of trouble if she truly tried to put her foot down and say no. She gets, I mean, in a couple lines we're going to have here's Hermes passing down like the threat of what Zeus will do. It is just a bad idea to put yourself in the way of a command, especially if it's coming from Zeus. It's a horrible idea, and most gods of any caliber, so as much as Calypso's a nymph, that sort of in a way makes her a minor-ish goddess, if you will, she knows better. So she's gonna protest, but ultimately she's gonna do what she has to because she's gonna know better. Yeah. True. She gets as close as she can, though. To a degree, kind of awesome, but then you remember this is narcissistic abuse and it's not as fun, right? Yes, just because gods are immortal doesn't mean they can't be punished. Look to Prometheus, for example. It's true. Zeus will punish immortals. He has no problem doing it when necessary. So it's, if Zeus comes and offers, like, you're going to do this or else, that or else meant something. It absolutely meant something. Atlas, too. He's being punished. Yeah, I hear the peg purrs. She's lying on her side. Her snores get louder when she lies on her side. That guy is their king. Who are they to not follow his word? Yeah, pretty much. And he is king by right of battle. He led and won the the battle against the Titans. So he has proven he is the strongest one there and the king by right and by might. And he truly is the strongest of all of the Olympians who are kind of like the top level of the gods. But lustrous Calypso shuddered at those words and burst into a flight of indignation. Hard-hearted you are, you gods, you unrivaled lords of jealousy, scandalized when goddesses sleep with mortals openly, even when one has made the man her husband. So when Dawn with her rose-red fingers took Orion, you gods in your everlasting ease were horrified, till chaste Artemis, throned in gold, attacked him out on Delos, shot him to death with gentle shafts. Ooh, let's pause to talk about this here, because Orion. Oh wow, did I already miss? I had a note here and I'm realizing I might have missed it, but I don't think I did. Did I? Maybe. Hold on, sorry, you guys are getting me in real time realizing I might have missed a note and I'm trying to double check where I had potentially missed it. Maybe I had. Well, we'll talk about it in a second, but I think we're good. So Orion, yes, our interesting, I love the Calypso voice. Look, I don't like Calypso, so I'm making her as just like, Orion, a giant hunter with his dog, Sirius. He's also mentioned as a constellation in the Iliad. He's going to be brought up as a constellation here even later in this book. And yes, Sirius, if you are then thinking Sirius Black, yeah, deliberately black dog. Very literal namings there. Calypso, original mean girl, in a different way than the suitors, but yes. Now here in the Odyssey, because we're going to see him a couple times. So Orion's going to get mentioned as like a constellation. We're also going to see him later in the underworld. He's one of the many, many people when we're on like the shores of the underworld who just appear and we see. He exists as like this pinnacle of human excellence in hunting, because obviously the greatest hunter would therefore be Artemis. You have to be careful. And the like crazy thing when we talk about Orion, because a lot of us probably know Orion, but then you wonder like, where does that story come from? What we know about Orion, Remus Lupin is basically Moon. Remus Lupin is Wolfie McWolf. Remus being Romulus and Remus Lupin coming from the word for wolf. So his name is Wolfie McWolf, hence you think it's called Moony. But the story of Orion here, it's in bits and pieces. So we don't have like a single full written account of him along the lines of like an Odyssey, an Iliad, an Argonautica. Like we just kind of have him in fragments all over the place. And so that means his story is kind of vague and there's different versions of it. Obviously he's mentioned here as being a lover of Eos, who is the dawn, and then later being slain by Artemis, and of course we will see him in the underworld. He is said to have been a son of Poseidon and let's see if I get this right, Euryale, or Euryale, that name always throws me off, who's a daughter actually of King Minos of Crete. King Minos, famously the story of the Minotaur. And when we talk about the Minoan civilization, it comes from all of that. It was said that he could walk on waves as if it were land, and that's because Poseidon is his dad, so he was basically doing Jesus before Jesus. And in the more well-known version of his story, it is that he hunted alongside Artemis and actually even her mother, who is Leto. Clover Fuzz, I'm confused by the use of the word gentle in the phrase shot him to death with gentle shafts. Somebody, if again, my people who know the Greek in the chat, is there something to be said on translation there? Because I'll tell you, Clover, I kind of got nothing on that one. Shot him to death with gentle shafts. Poetic? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Clover, that's a really good question, and I kind of wish I had an answer for you. I don't know. It could just be a quirk of the translation. But my peeps who know the Greek in the chat, if you are still there, if you've got a better answer, it would be appreciated. So Clover, congrats, you gave me a question that has stumped me because I just don't know. I don't know. Which line? Here we go. The gentle shafts. We are on line 140, 39, 38, 37. 137, it looks like. We're talking about Orion, or it says, till chaste Artemis throned in gold attacked him out on Delos, shot him to death with gentle shafts. Oh, all my people with Greek translations. Killing him with kindness. Well, killing him with kindness would be interesting, actually, because obviously the most well-known version of the story is that because he was hunting with Artemis and kind of became, in a way, a just sort of companion with her, now just friends. Artemis is very famously a virginal goddess and is always a virginal goddess. It's said that sometimes Gaia, aka Earth, or usually Apollo, disapproved of this relationship with Orion because he's a dude and Artemis is a virginal goddess. They're like, why are you with a man? How dare you? And so Apollo usually sent a giant scorpion to kill Orion. And they, Orion's death is something the ancient writers can never agree on. It's so true, Pepper Fizzy. Oh my God, Maya. Guys, we have to finish this book, and then I swear we will watch Danny's video together for reasons, because it'll be fun. And I'll sort of have to half watch it because I try to not spoil myself for animatics. Apollo jealous, you could say, because she doesn't usually hunt too much with Apollo, but here she is cavorting with this son of Poseidon, and he's a dude. Women and men can't be friends. Exactly, Lindsay. It's quite close. Okay, I'm letting all my translation people do their work in there, but I'm keeping an eye because I'm curious for the answer as well. So obviously, while Orion put up a good fight with this scorpion, the scorpion won. But after his death, Artemis actually asked Zeus to place Orion among the constellations, which was an honor, which he did, but he also did throw up the scorpion, which is how you can usually say, you often see the scorpion kind of more in the summer months, I believe, and Orion very famously in the winter. It's like the constellation of Orion is one of the easiest to pick out. Apollo, the gay best friend, jealous when his female friends have straight men for friends. Yeah, except this is his sister, so then you're just like, dude, get over it. Like, I get you're twins, but don't be weird. Except how do you say don't be weird to the Greeks and the Greek gods? Always. CYYU. Oh, Mary, you're spoiling it. I did say I filmed something super secret and that I couldn't talk about it, and trust me, it killed me. Yes, we will have to watch the Danny video together after this, because I can see Mary's having completely losing her mind. And Jake, yeah, as well. Yes, I am in Danny's video. For the people who are, secret, you have a secret. I was a part of Danny's latest skit for his video. He sent me an email and asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. I absolutely said yes, and it was very fun. I never filmed at that angle, so I think I sent him a million apologies going, I hope this footage works. He's very lovely and very funny. Let me tell you, when I read the lyrics I had, I laughed hysterically. Well, first I snorted, and then I was at the gym while doing it, so nearly choked because I snorted in the middle of working out, but there we go. Yes, settle down class, and we'll get our pizza party after the textbook. I promise. And I'm not the only one there. It was a lot of people involved. It was a great concept. So we will, yes, pizza party after the class. And this is not the longest book. It is definitely shorter than last book, so we will get through this reasonably speedily, I promise. Peg snort approved, yes. Is Orion the blind giant guy, or is that someone else? Orion is not blind. The blind giant. That will be Polyphemus later, who's the Cyclops who's going to get blinded. Oh, and then also you might be thinking Eve of Argos, who Hermes famously blinded and then killed when he was rescuing Princess Io for Zeus. But no, not Polyphemus. Eve, when you, the only other one I can really think of is Argos. If there's someone else, I will go and check and figure it out. But no, Orion is not blind. He's just a really, really good hunter, and we know he can walk on the water like it's land, so he can travel very easily. Blinded by Oenopion. Oh, that's, oh shoot, what was the name? Who was the guy he blinded? Subsequent. Actually, no, you're right. I am so sorry. I spoke incorrectly. Yes, that is a version of a story with Orion. He does, Oenopion does blind Orion, but his sight is restored. That's why it didn't hit me. Totally not encouraging multitasking. It's the blind giant. So yes, Eve, you are correct. That is Orion. He just gets his sight restored by the sun. So you are correct. You are correct. I am so sorry. You are right. Good catch. That's a version of the story I don't hear often, so I forget it very easily. And of course, there's tons of stuff rattling in my brain, so I'm always forgetting stuff. But this is Orion, and in this case, we're getting Calypso trying to essentially plead her case. One thing that's really important to know, because we're going to get more examples here from Calypso, and I will go over them. The important thing to remember about these ones that, I know, sun giving sight seems wrong. I know. Calypso's examples that she gives, the important thing to remember is that consent is involved. Is that all of these goddesses with their lovers that are going to get mentioned, consent was there. It was involved, it was in play, nobody was being held hostage, which is like, Calypso, you're not really pleading your case well. Yeah, consent. So like Eos with Orion, it would have been consensual, and the next one we're gonna get into, I think it's one more example, maybe two. Just one more example that's important will be that like those relationships were consensual between a goddess and a mortal. The idea of a goddess getting with a mortal was not that unusual. In fact, we have the whole thing with Achilles' parentage being the marriage of a nymph to a mortal. Like, it was not that unusual. So Calypso's argument is essentially moot. She's just angry that her toy essentially is being taken away. Really. Argo's best dog, it's true. Zeus hears the word consent, is confused. It's not part of his vocabulary. It's true. It's true. It's so true. And so when Demeter, the graceful one with lovely braids, gave way to her passion and made love to Iasion, bedding down in a furrow plowed 3 times, Zeus got wind of it soon enough, I'd say, and blasted the man to death with flashing bolts. So Iasion, press S to stand. Iasion was actually a son of Zeus and one of the Pleiades, the Pleiadian nymph Electra. And this is not to be confused with Agamemnon's daughter, Electra. She's someone else. Lots of people with the same names, I know. And so with Demeter, Iasion is said to have been the father of Plutus, who is a god and personification of wealth, who later the Romans are going to co-opt and combine with Hades to make their version of Pluto. And yes, again, they lay together in this thrice plowed field. And let's also remember the Pleiades, if I'm recalling correctly, are also children of Atlas. A lot of his children are nymphs, like a whole bunch of them, the Pleiades, the Hesperides, like all of these. And so that would make Iasion, related technically to Calypso. But I honestly don't know too much more about that story, like why Zeus would be made. I can't remember that story well enough. And I did not put it in my notes, which is mea culpa, shame on me. So yes, that's my bad that I didn't write more on that story. But again, these interactions between these goddesses or like nymphs, these immortals and a mortal, are all consensual between the 2 parties. So Calypso, you're not making your case here, basically. Constellation mentioned. We are going to be mentioning, yes, constellations. Yes, we have quite a few of them that get mentioned in here. They come up a lot. The constellations were important. I mean, part of how the Greeks would navigate, and then also stories. So many of them. But we're going to get even more into constellations, Book Dragon, later on. Do not worry. I know I took notes on constellations. There we go. So now, at last, you gods, you train your spite on me for keeping a mortal man beside me. Which is like, girl, you are so missing the point. The man I saved, riding astride his keelboard, all alone, when Zeus, with one hurl of a white-hot bolt, had crushed his racing warship down the wine-dark sea. There, all the rest of his loyal shipmates died. But the wind drove him on, the current bore him here, and I welcomed him warmly, cherished him, even vowed to make the man immortal, ageless all his days. She would need permission from Zeus to do that. It's important. Aren't the Pleiades related to the stars in Subaru's badge? I believe they are, actually. ABC. I do believe that is where that logo kind of comes from. Yeah, Calypso, shut up. Oh my god, I know. Hence, I'm reading her as the most insufferable character because she's very insufferable. But since there's no way for another god to thwart the will of storming Zeus and make it come to nothing, let the man go, if the Almighty insists, commands, and destroy himself on the barren salt sea. I'll send him off, but not with any escort. I have no ships in reach, no crew to ply the oars and send him scudding over the sea's broad back. But I will gladly advise him. I'll hide nothing, so he can reach his native country all unharmed. Yeah, she's sulking, in case you haven't guessed. And the guide and giant killer reinforced her words. Release him at once, just so. Steer clear of the rage of Zeus, or down the years he'll fume and make your life a hell. So yeah, let that Ithacan man go. We're not being subtle here. We're making it very clear. There's an or else. And I don't want to know what Zeus means when he says he'll make her life a hell. It will suck. So, yeah, Hermes, destroy. Oh, Layman Drop, I'm glad you liked that. I know, holding it in was very hard. It was very fun to do. With that, the powerful giant... Oh, actually, you know what? Let me give one more note, because I realized I had skipped a note up here, and I do want to talk about it. Love when sassy characters like go from sleeves. It makes you pay attention. Did so much better here. My book is, so literal. Oh, Mariana, I'm sorry. I hate when translations go like, oh. But I did want to mention this, because I had skipped a note of his. I had mentioned his wand, and then I forgot to talk about it. So he gets called God of the Golden Wand. The Caduceus, the famous... staff, this wand, as it gets called, that Hermes has. I believe it comes from the ancient Greek word karukaion, which literally means something like herald's wand or staff, which makes sense. He is a herald of the gods. Now, this same staff is borne by other heralds. Hermes is not the only one who uses the caduceus. Namely, we've got Iris, who usually serves as a messenger specifically of Hera, also very much linked with the rainbow. I believe we talked with her earlier before. So it's a short staff that is entwined by two serpents and often, though not always apparently, surmounted by wings on the top. It is often confused, very famously, with the rod of Asclepios, which has only one snake and no wings. So that is why most people have accidentally used the caduceus versus the rod of Asclepios for medicine. ABC, exactly. That's the one people keep mixing up with the rod of Asclepios because they're very similar looking. I think it was actually the US military that very famously used the caduceus for the image of like a medical corps, and it was like, oh no, and that sort of misconception has sort of stuck. Runic, oh, that is a very good image of the rod of Asclepius. Very nice. So the caduceus, this wand, was actually gifted to Hermes by Apollo as actually a gesture of like friendship after Hermes both invented and then gave to Apollo the first ever lyre, which was gut he had strung across a tortoiseshell. And this is when he's like a baby. This was all part of an incident where he kind of stole some of Apollo's cows, but then he started playing this thing that he had invented. Apollo, being a god associated with music, was entranced by it and he wanted it. And it was like kind of part of a trade, and that's why they're reasonably okay with each other as opposed to holding a grudge. Did I miss serious Hermes? I'm sad. You did. His moment of saying, I will make your life a hell. You can listen back to it later, Jake. No, it's a psychopomp rom. They go into the next life. Oh my God, ABC. That's good. That's brutal, but so good. Hi, I'm also late, so going to catch back up, but talking about Hermes. Fitzgerald translates Zeus talking to Hermes and asks him to go to Calypso as his favorite son around line 30. He did really like Hermes. It does seem that, when he looks at his sons, his options are Ares, Apollo, and Hermes. Oh, and Dionysus, who's usually very much the youngest. Hermes is the one he interacts with the most. It does seem he probably had like the best rapport with Hermes. I mean, if you're functioning as your dad's messenger, you guys clearly are able to communicate. But AJ, that's probably why he gets called his favorite son. I don't have that specifically in the Fagles translation. That was clearly a choice that Fitzgerald made. Fitzgerald is very poetic. It's a fun fact. My grandfather's favorite translation is the Fitzgerald translation. It feels the most poetic and really embraces that this is poetry. So not unusual to think that Hermes would be his favorite song. It's honestly probably really true because it sure as heck ain't Ares, and Apollo, not necessarily. Dionysus seems to spend a lot of his time kind of more on Earth cavorting around than he does on Olympus, so probably just didn't build a relationship there if we think about it. I feel like Calypso has already also as well insulted Hestia because Calypso is a terrible hostess. No, she's awful. Again, in this house we do not like Calypso. Being real. Hephaestus, so Sam, play some games. Hephaestus is not a son of Zeus. He's a son of Hera, and Hera basically conceived and bore him alone. To spite Zeus. So very famously, Hephaestus is actually not his son, but he kind of gets a place there. Anyway, it's look, again, Greek myths are strange. There's some strangeness. You kind of just have to go, anyway, and move on through. So yes, that is why I specifically did not reference Hephaestus, because he's not considered a son of Zeus. He's not, his only parent is Hera. Honestly, it was quite a move. It was quite a move from Hera. But unfortunately, she doesn't like her own son very much, and Zeus doesn't seem to like him much either, so kind of poor Hephaestus in this whole thing. He gets screwed. Yes, no, Hephaestus does actually forge things like all of these weapons for these gods, and he features obviously in the Iliad. He makes Achilles a new bespoke set of armor and a very famous shield we spend a lot of time describing in the Iliad. So look, Hephaestus, honestly, we like Hephaestus in this house. Yes, so what Mary's saying is he did Hephaestus off the mountain because like all babies, he was kind of ugly. That's one version. Another version is that Hephaestus and Hera got into an argument over something, and Hephaestus stepped in and took Hera's side, and Zeus is actually the one who flung him off Olympus, and he ended up crippled as a result. That's why he said he kind of walks with a limp. But it's honestly poor Hephaestus. But he's also, Zeus does seem to acknowledge Hephaestus as the steadiest of temperaments in general, and that is part of why he marries off Aphrodite to Hephaestus. He says, honestly, I think that's the safest bet when you've got a goddess like this who all of the other male Olympians were lusting after. And he goes, Hephaestus is the only one who's going to keep his head on his shoulders in this situation. So kind of interesting. Yeah, and it's sad. He got yeeted because he was disabled. There might be a version that's like that. I've always heard it that because he was yeeted and by Zeus and so hard, like his impact, like crushed his leg or something. Like, I mean, I'm making that bit up, but like, what I'm assuming is that he is disabled and therefore limps. But it would not surprise me if he came out essentially wrong because of the fact that Hera essentially created him from nothing, and it was just Hera conceiving and birthing this child, that if he came out deformed, if you will, that would make sense to the Greeks as to why Hephaestus is therefore lame or crippled, words that they would use, and walks with a limp. It would, like, to the Greeks, that's a logic that they understand, because it would be seen as going against kind of the natural order of things, if that makes any sense. Doesn't Hera like Hephaestus in Homer's telling? I remember her referring to him as her beautiful son, the Iliad, and other positive vibes. She does suck up a bit to Hephaestus, James, in the Iliad. Very specifically, she's on the side of the Greeks and wants Hephaestus to help out the Greeks. There's an awful lot of speaking very nicely to certain characters to get what you want. We're going to see Odysseus famously do that all over the place. Hera absolutely has no problem doing that with other gods. I mean, also, again, we have the character of Thetis, who is Achilles' mom, who goes to Zeus and begs, and like also begs Hera, and then they end up going daisy chaining to to Hephaestus to make this armor for Achilles after the death of Patroclus, who had been wearing Achilles' original armor, and which Achilles gives away as part of the honors of the funeral games for Patroclus. So, the ancient Greeks were chill about a lot of things, but disabilities usually were not one of them from my recollection. You're correct, Runic. You're correct. It's part of why what is done to Poseidon, like the rage that Poseidon feels over it, it makes sense. Apollo or Zeus couldn't fix his leg. They just didn't. Don't know if it's a case of couldn't or wouldn't or were like not allowed to. Zeus obviously was not going to. I mean, if we go with the idea that he's the one who flung flung Hephaestus, why is he going to step in? He wanted to punish him. Or if we even just say that Hera flung him off and that's why his leg got broken. Zeus would go, that's not my child. I don't really care that much. Apollo, if he's getting the vibe that that's not what Zeus wants, he's not going to step in and do it in that case. And he as much as these characters are siblings, they don't always seem to be super close. Like, some of the gods have super close relationships with each other, but they are a family who are often kind of off all over the place doing their own thing. Yeah, all about coulda, not shoulda. Yeah, the gods, absolutely. Calypso, just be glad Zeus didn't send Ares or Athena to truly fuck her up on sight. Yeah, honestly, they would not have been brooking argument here. That's why Hermes is the messenger. And it's very important to also know that Hermes, one of his other things under his purview as a god is actually oration, so he is a good talker. Like, canonically a good talker. That's part of why orators were kind of under his purview. Hermes is a god of a lot of different things. I mean, remember, these gods are all gods of many different things. We often associate them with one thing more than another. Like, that's their main area of expertise domain, if you will. But Hermes is like a whole bunch of things there. Okay, but was Apollo even around at this point in the timeline? Yes, he was. Yes. All of the gods at this point exist, because they're getting mentioned, and we know that at this point Dionysus has to already exist because he's part of often the story of Ariadne involving Theseus and the Minotaur, which is well before this. So like all of the gods are here. And Apollo also shows up in the Iliad. So we know he's around. Are they here specifically, you mean like geographically? Well, we don't know where the hell they are. If they're not speaking or they're not particularly part of the story, Homer's not going to go out and list every single god. That's why often in these conversations on Olympus, we have the whole, and all you other, death gods who do not die and all this. It's a way of saying, hey, royal everybody gather around. I mean the part with Hephaestus. Oh, was Apollo even around when it came to Hephaestus? I don't think you might be, if we go with the idea that Hephaestus was, crippled, especially as a baby, then actually Apollo might not have been around yet. It's true. or he might have been. I actually don't know where Hephaestus sits off the top of my head in terms of like who's first, second, third born. Yeah, it's true. He can't heal a leg if he isn't there, and he likely also wouldn't. But that's a good point, Book Dragon. He might not have, because I don't really remember the. I know that Athena is considered the third born, oftentimes kind of the children, but I don't remember exactly. I mean, and I know Dionysus is last. Very famously, he's last. But that's actually no. That's a good question. I can't get too much into there. I always think Midas, yes. Yeah, gods are not helicopter parents. They are very much sink or swim type parents. Yes, they are. Very much so. Cuddly we gather round, exactly. All right. Twins are just before Dionysus. Oh, the twins aren't that late, aren't they? Huh, interesting. Well, I guess that makes sense when I also consider Aries. Okay, no, that makes sense. Sorry. Relatively late addition to the pantheon, like historically, so it would make sense for. Yeah, everybody's correcting me, and again, I sometimes forget what order they come out in. Like, I tend to just think of them as a group, and I know, like, okay, the children of Kronos, and then like here are the children of, like, here are their children. So yeah, it's true. There is a timeline, and that's on me. I tend to just, after a while, I just start like they're a group. Yeah, Hephaestus is before Athena. Yeah, so he would be these. So I guess the firstborn would, I guess at that point, be Ares. Ares would be the firstborn. Yeah, that makes sense. They didn't like him much either. Kind of true. Followed by Hephaestus, yes, who does give the thing to help split open Zeus's skull, which leads to the birthing of Athena. So thank you, everybody who's giving these answers in the chat. Again, I know many things, but I don't always remember, and I don't know all the things. I freely admit when I don't know or I can't remember. So I love this. Part of why we love book club. With that, the powerful giant killer sped away. The queenly nymph sought out the great Odysseus, the commands of Zeus still ringing in her ears, and found him there on the headland, sitting, still weeping, his eyes never dry. Hesiod would be not happy with your chronology, Maddie. Oh, Hesiod would get so mad at me, Mariana. I think he'd be mad at a lot of people, though. Hesiod's got his own opinions on things. His sweet life flowing away with the tears he wept for his foiled journey home, since the nymph no longer pleased. In the nights, true, he'd sleep with her in the arching cave. He had no choice. Unwilling lover alongside lover, all too willing. But all his days, he'd sit on the rocks and beaches, wrenching his heart with sobs and groans and anguish, gazing out over the barren sea through blinding tears. So coming up to him now, the lustrous goddess ventured. No need, my unlucky one, to grieve here any longer. No, don't waste your life away. Now I am willing, heart and soul, to send you off at last. Come, take bronze tools, cut your lengthy timbers, make them into a broad-beamed raft, and top it off with a half-deck high enough to sweep you free and clear on the misty seas. And I myself will stock her with food and water, ruddy wine to your taste, all to stave off hunger, give you clothing, send you a stiff following wind so you can reach your native country all unharmed. If only the gods are willing. They rule the vaulting skies. They're stronger than I to plan and drive things home. Yeah, this part always hurts so much. It's the worst because it gives you a better glimpse of, wow. This is the reason I say Calypso is a poster child for narcissistic abuse. Just an absolute poster child. Is the line, since the nymph no longer pleased, meant to be Calypso's perspective of Odysseus? Yeah, it is. Because obviously he's not happy about the situation at all. As it says, he had no choice. Yes, he would sleep with her. He had no choice. So it's the idea in Calypso's mind, she's like, well, I guess I no longer please him. I mean, she's delusional. She's delusional. In her own narcissistic reality, she's everything he wants. And we're going to come to that even more in a second. Because it's, didn't Hesiod do the telegony? I'm fine with beefing with him. I don't think he did. I think somebody else did the telegony, Mary, but somebody can correct me. Yeah, no, she hates having her toy taken away. It's true. I know everybody's coming from Danny's video. We're going to watch it together when we finish here. But thank you, Omni. This is very fun. Greek myth is just which version you like the most. Pepper Fizzy, it's true. Yeah, again, there's variations on the theme, so in a way you can kind of pick and choose which version you tend to roll with. It's why there's also so many discrepancies you'll find between who's telling it. Sometimes those things are big, and sometimes they're pretty minor and inconsequential. Oh, Calypso is Kathy Bates in Misery. Game Wizard, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Oh, Birchwood, was it Hesiod who wrote the Telegony? Wow. Hesiod, I'm not mad that we lost that. Actually, it makes a lot of sense, though, when I remember stuff that he's also written about Circe and Odysseus. It would make sense that he wrote the Telegony. Kirsten Ford, I don't mind the Theogony. Like, I like reading it, but I can get how maybe not everybody likes it. I just remember studying it, and I didn't mind studying it. Long-enduring Odysseus shuddered at that, and broke out in a sharp flight of protest. Passage home? Never. Surely you're plotting something else, goddess, urging me, in a raft, to cross the ocean's mighty gulfs. So vast, so full of danger, not even deep-sea ships can make it through, swift as they are and buoyed up by the winds of Zeus himself. I won't set foot on a raft until you show good faith, until you consent to swear, goddess, a binding oath. You'll never plot some new intrigue to harm me. Which again, his reaction to being told he can go home. Huge, like the contrast in the reaction of he's getting what he wants and he's immediately suspicious. It makes sense, and it speaks to how much he has suffered. Oh, you're mixing up the telegony and the theogony. Whoops. Yeah, his first reaction is to think it's a trick, which says Ugaman. Ugaman did the telegony. Thank you. Again, I don't think too much on the telegony because we don't have the whole thing. We only have like synopses, and those are so far down the line that it's like, how much of that do we have? Again, I cursed the Library of Alexandria burning because we probably had at least a copy in there. I almost didn't pass because of him. Well, technically it was because the prof wasn't good at teaching. Ooh, that's sad. Maria or Mariah, I don't know how you want it pronounced, or Maria even. That's sad. That makes me sad because I like the theogony. I think it's kind of fun to read, and you get like the cosmogony and all the fun stuff in there. What type of psychological torture beyond just forcing him to sleep with her during the 7 years if she made herself look like Penelope? Yeah, Game Wizard, we don't really know the specifics there, but this does speak to the level of torment Odysseus has been enduring, that his first reaction is, I don't trust that. Isn't Odysseus' ancestors' line got cursed with only one child each generation? Would that make the... It would make even parts of the... so Pepper Fizzy, if that were the case, it would make even parts... I think it might be the Theogony, or it's somewhere else where even Hesiod writes that apparently Circe and Odysseus had like 3 children in the 1 year he was there. So like that would make that very weird. Which is, again, lots of variations on a theme. And this is the best Sasha Velour. Don't joke about that. Is Calypso technically a child of Zeus and Hera? No, Serene. Calypso is a daughter of Atlas the Titan. I can't remember who her mother is. If you go back to the book club for book 1, because we introduced Calypso there, I talk a bit about her parentage. Yeah, Odysseus, she's outright a child of Atlas the Titan. I can't remember who her mother is. It's one of the, I think, Oceanid nymphs. So, yeah. But also this does introduce to us an Odysseus who is highly suspicious, who doesn't take things on face value, which makes sense when we also consider what is his most famous feat at this moment in time here. It's the Trojan horse, something you should not have taken at face value. He's very well aware that there are tricks and everything, and he doesn't often take people at face value. He's very suspicious, but this is even more terrible when he's being told you're getting everything you want. And he's just like, don't trust that. He was so intense. The lustrous goddess smiled, stroked him with her... Does it say the children's names that they have? Akari and Nozomi. I think in the Theogony it might not. I can't remember. It's been a while since I read it. You would have to go and check. Pleione is the prime suspect for Calypso's mom. Correct, Birchwood. I think that sounds about right. Stroked him with her hand, savored his name, and chided. What a wicked man you are, and never at a loss. What a thing to imagine, what a thing to say. Earth, be my witness now, the vaulting sky above, and the dark cascading waters of the Styx. I swear by the greatest, grimmest oath that binds the happy gods, I will never plot some new intrigue to harm you. which is important. Also, let's remember that Calypso doesn't think she's been harming him all this while, which is just like, oh my God, the delusion is strong. Now, we gotta talk about the river Styx and this oath and what this all means. This is where we get to have a very nice, reasonably sized myth chat. Yeah, she's gaslighting to the hilt, correct. Yeah, again, there are reasons I don't like Calypso. I think I'm given plenty of them here. The river Styx, it's the main river of the underworld and the guarantor of oaths sworn by the gods. It's sometimes even called the Dread River of Oath. Some new intrigue, which means they're old ones, I know. Now, according to Hesiod, who we've been talking about here, any god who pours libation, basically of the river's water, and were to, as a god, and were to swear falsely, ends up paralyzed for a year, and then for 9 years is excluded from the feasts and assemblies of the gods. So you do not break an oath by the river Styx. It is the most binding oath a god can make. There are consequences for breaking it. It's why they traditionally don't. And so a lot of this, again, comes from Hesiod. So Styx, the river Styx is the river, but Styx is also a character, if you will. She was the first to side with Zeus during the Titanomachia, and she actually brought her children along with her. Yeah, 9 years are very specific. It is. So because she was the first to join over to Zeus's side, that is how he appointed her to be this great oath of the gods, and that her children would actually live high on Olympus with him always, which was a great honor. He's essentially guaranteeing the children of Styx an eternal place of pride alongside him, who's going to be the highest authority, again, should they win, which she trusted they would, which is why she got this honor. It's mostly her covering her own ass here. If something were to happen to Odysseus, she wouldn't be responsible, therefore no god would take revenge. See Iolaus. True. Rick Riordan's got to be one. Make me hold up my end of the bargain. You should maybe swear the 6. It was a well-known, intense oath. It's why they made it reasonably carefully, because they really had to keep it. So if you're wondering who then Styx also is, she's the eldest of what are called the Oceanids. So the Oceanids are daughters of the Titans Oceanus and Tethys, or Tethys. She actually married another Titan called Pallas, not to be confused with the Pallas related to Athena. That's a completely different character. And she has several notable children, these children of Styx, again, who get to be in eternal glory up on Olympus. You have Zelus, or Zelos, who is glory, or kind of emulation. You have Nike, or Nike, who is victory. You have Kratos, who is like strength and kind of dominion, and then you have, I believe it is Bia, it might be Bia, who is force or violence. And these are aspects, gods, characters who appear in a lot. Obviously, if anybody's ever seen the famous statue of Nike or Nike, that's in the Louvre with the winged victory. Her kids are a big deal. She took that leap, if you will, of faith. She believed in Zeus. She sided with him, the first one to do so very publicly. She gets the rewards of doing that for taking such a big risk. So Styx herself lives at the entrance to the underworld. It's in a cave that's kind of propped up all the way to even the heavens, all around by these big, beautiful silver pillars. Usually, if, people are going to be, making an oath by the river Styx to, pour the libations and everything else, it's Iris who gets sent to collect this famous water of the river Styx, which is famously very cold, for the gods to then swear by. And it's said that the river Styx actually has about 1/10 of her father's water, so Oceanus's water, and it flows like far underground and will actually come to the surface and pour out from like a high rock, I guess, maybe potentially kind of like a waterfall. So like, honestly, prime real estate location. She's living large, basically. So that is why whenever, it's probably always the big question, why do they always swear by the river Styx? It was a big deal, and Hesiod is the one who details out to us the consequences of not holding to that oath. So getting her to swear by the river Styx would actually give Odysseus a small measure of like, okay, she's sworn by that, there's no way she would want to break that. Everybody's coming from the Danny video. We're gonna watch it later, I promise. I figured he would be able to get it out today. Yes, but the thing that for me kills me about this whole interaction with Calypso is how like truly narcissistic she is. She does not care that he's been in pain this whole while. This is all, she's losing her favorite toy. So G, I have not read the Emily Wilson translation. I asked my grandfather about it, and he says it's fine. He doesn't love it. He says it's good enough, but doesn't satisfy, with something to that effect. I've heard mixed reviews of it. I have issue with it being forced into a specific meter. I know it's an iambic pentameter, which is not like she can do dactylic hexameter. That's pretty unique to the Greek language, or even to Latin in a way. So I just don't like when you bind yourself in the constraints of a meter, because I worry it can affect a translation. Screen share, were you planning this? Maya, I kind of was. Because I knew when I realized a book club and that were going to overlap, as so long as he said it didn't get delayed, which I figured it wouldn't, we would screen share and watch it together. Yeah, I know everybody always asks about Emily Wilson, and that's fair. Some people don't make it to all the book clubs, and they might not realize I've answered that question, so it's totally fine. I have no problem repeating stuff like that. Let's see. I would never plot some new intrigue to harm you. Never. All I have in mind and devise for you are the very plans I'd fashion for myself if I were in your straits. My every impulse bends to what is right. Not iron, trust me, the heart within my breast. I am all compassion. And lustrous Calypso quickly led the way as he followed in the footsteps of the goddess. They reached the arching cavern, man and god as one, and Odysseus took the seat that Hermes just left, while the nymph set out before him every kind of food and drink that mortal men will take. Calypso sat down face to face with the king, and the women served her nectar and ambrosia. They reached out for the good things that lay at hand, and when they'd had their fill of food and drink, the lustrous one took up a new approach. So then, royal son of Laertes, Odysseus, man of many exploits, still eager to leave at once and hurry back to your own home, your beloved native land? Good luck to you, even so. Farewell. But if you only knew deep down what pains are fated to fill your cup before you reach that shore, you'd stay right here, preside in our house with me and be immortal, much as you long to see your wife, the one you pine for all your days. And yet I just might claim to be nothing less than she, neither in face nor figure. Hardly right is it for mortal woman to rival immortal goddess. How? In build? In beauty? Yeah, big ew. Big ew. This is where I said I briefly want to talk about something. She is utilizing a tactic that you see in narcissistic abuse called DARVO, which is deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. She's turning this all back on Odysseus, as we're going to see. Odysseus is actually going to apologize now to her when he has nothing to apologize for. Oh, Eliseo, thank you so much. Oh, I'm glad you're able to come be here from Peru. Yeah, the audacity. And it should make you uncomfortable. Everybody's saying this should make you uncomfortable. It is meant to. It's meant to make you uncomfortable. Fagles is better if narrated. All of these, the epics and stuff are all better if narrated. They were meant to be performed. So yeah, the audacity. What she's using is Darvo. It is a technique usually when somebody who is a narcissistic abuser is being called out for their behavior or starting to face consequences for their own actions, they tend to revert to this tactic because therefore their narcissistic reality doesn't shatter and they basically blame you for everything. It's a tactic you will see a lot. And not just with narcissistic abuse, oftentimes in other forms of abuse. Again, so this is pretty much all I wanted to say on that topic, but that's exactly what she's doing here. She's flipping it around on Odysseus, which is even more dangerous. The Odyssey. Oh, I do make that joke somewhere later. What she's doing here is a moment of slight scariness, even though she says, I will not ever put any designs on you, and she's sworn by the river Styx. That does give Odysseus an element of safety, but he's very aware of the power dynamic here. She's an immortal, he is not. There is an absolute power imbalance here, and she's flaunting it, which, like, it sucks. And let's also remember this was an actively practiced religion at the time. This is basically like God showing up and saying, what do you mean you like this person better than me? And it's like, shit, did I just piss off God, a God? So he immediately, as we're going to see, is going to have to backstep and like placate her Because by this point, Odysseus has learned his freaking lesson about pissing off gods. Like the ancient Greek gaslighter. Yes, that is Calypso. Pepperfizzy, you are correct. And yes, you should not be able to stand. Her words do kind of go against, really, the Xenia has been violated in that she held him hostage and she's manipulated the situation. It sucks. If she can still convince him to willingly stay, yeah, she's trying to get around what she's been told. She's trying the last Hail Mary pass at like not having to give up her favorite toy, which again, she objectifies Odysseus. It's gross and terrible all the way. Yeah, exactly. This is all terrible. It never ends well if you try to say someone is prettier than a goddess. Never ends well. So she's trying to force him into impossible situations, but we're going to see how Odysseus deals with it. Great goddess, worldly Odysseus answered. Don't be angry with me, please. All that you say is true. How well I know. Look at my wise Penelope. She falls far short of you, your beauty, stature. She is mortal after all, and you never age or die. Nevertheless, I pine all my days to travel home, to see the dawn of my return. And if a god will wreck me yet again on the wine-dark sea, I can bear that too, with a spirit tempered to endure. Much have I suffered, labored long and hard by now in the waves and wars. Add this to the total. Bring the trial on. Even as he spoke, the sun set, and darkness swept the earth, and now, withdrawing into the cavern's deep recesses, long in each other's arms, they lost themselves in love. Ugh, gross. All the gross. He has no choice. He's still kind of stuck. Special kind of evil to make him talk badly about the woman he loves so much. Yeah. But notice how he very smartly qualifies it by saying, well, she's mortal. Of course she doesn't compare to you because you're a goddess. In his head, he's still the ultimate wife guy, and he describes her as wise. Which it's very true. Again, Penelope is the only character in this whole story who's going to be able to pull one over on Odysseus. The only character in the entirety of the Odyssey. It's awesome. Under my spiciness certificate for 600 burns under Matt's command. That is funny. And yes, there's lots of ew to this whole thing. Thankfully, we're going to be leaving her. Thank God, we don't have to spend that much time with Calypso. When young Dawn, with her rose-red fingers, shone once more, Odysseus quickly dressed himself in cloak and shirt, while the nymph slipped on a loose, glistening robe, filmy, a joy to the eye, and round her waist she ran a brocaded golden belt, and over her head a scarf to shield her brow, then turned to plan the man's great voyage home. She gave him a heavy bronze axe that fit his grip, both blades well honed, with a fine olive haft lashed firm to its head. So this would be a dual-sided axe. They used both dual and single-sided axes as weapons. She gave him a polished, smoothing adze as well, and then she led the way to the island's outer edge where trees grew tall, alders, black poplars, and firs that shot sky high, seasoned, drying for years, ideal for easy floating. Once she'd shown her guest where the tall timber stood, Calypso, the lustrous goddess, headed home. He set to cutting trunks. The work was done in no time. 20 in all he felled. He trimmed clean with his axe and split them deftly, trued them straight to the line. Meanwhile, the radiant goddess brought him drills. He bored through all his planks and wedged them snugly, knocking them home together, locked with pegs and joints. Broad in the beam and bottom flat as a merchantman, when a master shipwright turns out her hull. So broad the craft Odysseus made himself. Working away at speed, he put up half-decks pinned to close-set ribs, and a sweep of gunwales rounded off the sides. He fashioned the mast next, and sank its yard in deep, and added a steering oar to hold her right on course. Then he fenced her stem to stern with twigs and wicker, bulwark against the sea surge, floored with heaps of brush. What was that word, atze? A-T-Z-E. Is it atze? Atze? Somebody can correct my pronunciation. I assumed it was atze. Or is it A-D-Z-E? I think it was A-T-Z-E. A-D-Z-E. You are correct, Book Dragon. My bad, I was misremembering it. Since when was this man a master shipbuilder? Probably most of his life. He knew, he understood how to build a ship. He grew up on an island. The only way you leave that island is by boat. So while he's like, is he a master shipbuilder? Well, he's building like a one-man raft. So he's not building like a 50-oared, he's not building a pentaconter, which is like the 50-oared ships. But he would know at least how to fashion a raft. He grew up on an island. It was likely something he just had to learn how to do. And he would, or watch the craftsmen and what have you. She made him build his own raft. Of course she did. Well, yeah, Zeus also, I believe, earlier said that like he's gonna do, it's a raft of his own making. Part of this is, again, if you're a hero, you want to do as much of it yourself as you can. The glory comes from doing it yourself. It's a big deal if he says, I made this freaking raft and sailed my own ass home. Yo, the glory, the kleos, it goes up. So it's called a ship, it's more of a raft. Yeah, they might use the word ship here. It's a raft. It's small. It is a castaway moment. Absolutely. Unfortunately, his Wilson, yes, is an immortal gaslighting homewrecker. You are correct, Game Wizard. And yep, Sam, more Kleos. This is adding to his legend, to his glory, that he does all these things himself. Heaps of brush. And lustrous Calypso came again, now with bolts of cloth to make the sail. And he finished that off too, expertly. Braces, sheets, and brails he rigged all fast on board, then eased her down with levers into the sunlit sea. That was the 4th day, and all his work was done. Yeah, so would you have trusted Calypso to build it properly? No. Don't care if she made that promise. I don't think he would trust her with anything. Kleos farming is what Odysseus is doing all the time, always. That's what all the heroes did, all the time. On the 5th, the lovely goddess launched him from her island, once she had bathed and decked him out in fragrant clothes. And Calypso stowed 2 skins aboard, dark wine in one, the other one held water, added a sack of rations, filled with her choicest meats to build his strength, and summoned a wind to bear him onward, fair and warm. The wind lifting his spirits high, royal Odysseus spread sail, gripping the tiller, seated astern, and now the master mariner steered his craft, sleep never, closing his eyes, forever scanning the stars, the Pleiades, and the plowman late to set, and the great bear that mankind also calls the wagon. So let's talk a bit about constellations. Constellation, the Pleiades, it is a cluster of stars. They are 7 sister nymphs. They are also said to be companions of Artemis. They are also daughters of Atlas, which means they are related to Calypso. Half-sisters, really, of Calypso. So their name is, actually, no, they might actually be full sisters to Calypso. As somebody had mentioned, their name is derived from their own mother, Pleione, who is an ocean nymph. In case you're curious, the 7 Pleiades are Maia, who, yes, is the mother of Hermes, or Maia. Electra, who we mentioned before, the mother of Dardanus and Iasion. Giti, or Taigete, who's the mother of Lacedaemon, who famously kind of helps to found that area. Alcyone, Celaino or Celaino, Sterope, and Merope, who is sometimes, often in some stories, written eventually as the wife of Sisyphus. Kind of depends on who you read. The plowman, Maya, I know it's Maia, but I can pretend, yeah. Yes, Maya. So the plowman is the constellation from the Greek word, is it Bootes? Or I don't think it's Bootes, that sounds wrong. Bootes? Somebody can correct me. It's said to set very late in the evening. And fun fact, it's one of the 48 constellations that the Greek astronomer Ptolemy actually cataloged way later in like the 1st or 2nd century CE. Hesperides? Do you mean the Hesperides, the nymphs who guard the garden of the Hesperides? Yes, they're also related to them. Boetus, yes, it might be Boetes, yes, thank you, Mariana. I just wrote it weird, probably a typo. And the Great Bear, of course, we're talking about Ursa Major. That one's pretty simple, sometimes considered part of a larger constellation called the Wagon. Read somewhere that Maia is Hermes' mother. Am I crazy? You are not. That is Hermes' mom. That's absolutely who that is, Marissa. You are correct. She wheels on her axis, always fixed, watching the hunter, and she alone is denied a plunge in the ocean's bath. They're talking there about the Great Bear, and obviously the hunter, we're talking again about Orion. Does they gone if they turn into stars? oh, like, are they gone if they turn into stars? Not necessarily, because we know at least Orion, like, he is a constellation, but his shade is down in the underworld, so no, not really. Perseus isn't because the constellation is right next to the Seven Sisters. I know, right? English translations are too in love with alliteration with naming things. Always. Always. Hers were the stars the lustrous goddess told him to keep hard to port as he cut across the sea. And 17 days he sailed, making headway well. On the 18th, shadowy mountains slowly loomed. The Phaeacians' island, reaching toward him now, over the misty breakers, rising like a shield. But now, Poseidon, god of the earthquake, saw him, just returning home from his Ethiopian friends, from miles away on the Solimni mountain range. He spied Odysseus sailing down the sea, and it made his fury boil even more. Oh, no, wait, it's Boetes. I think you're actually right. Yes, the cow's handler. Okay, Boetes. We'll just say that I'm probably mispronouncing it. So there we go. And yes, Poseidon entered the chat. That man just goes having one good party in Ethiopia, and he's rolling back, and he goes, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And he's not happy. Oh, Poseidon be mad. It's true. See, legs are broken, or am I in trouble? We had to get in the water, gang. It's true, we are actually literally about to get in the water. He shook his head and rumbled to himself. Outrageous. Look how the gods have changed their minds about Odysseus. While I was off with my Ethiopians. Just look at him there, nearing Phaeacia's shores, where he's fated to escape his noose of pain that's held him until now. That phrase, which I can't speak to in translation, but I love, noose of pain, is showing how Odysseus is meant to suffer, but not necessarily to die. Poseidon doesn't necessarily up to this point, has not really wanted to kill him, but make him suffer, which obviously is going to be emphasized later when we get to Polyphemus. That's the reasoning why. I mean, Polyphemus makes a pretty specific curse when he calls out asking his dad for help, but this is about torment while living, which is ultimately what Odysseus bestowed upon Polyphemus by blinding him and not killing him. It is literal. It's just awesome, Homer. Oh, Homer is just great. I'm telling you, this guy knew drama. Yeah. He's the Grinch in this moment looking down from Mount Crumpet. He kind of is. I don't know, man. If you're mad, take it up with Zeus. Yeah. Yeah, I can only think of Poseidon being in a Hawaiian shirt, khakis, the flip sunglasses, pulling a suitcase behind. He's coming back from vacation. Kinda. Can you imagine you just had like the best party ever in Ethiopia and then you see this? Vacation buzz ruined. This noose of pain is still, my hopes ride high. I'll give that man his swamping fill of trouble. With that, he rammed the clouds together, both hands clutching his trident, churned the waves into chaos, whipping all the gales from every quarter, shrouding over in thunderheads the earth and sea at once, and night swept down from the sky. East and south winds clashed, and the raging west and north sprung from the heavens, roiled, heaving breakers up, and Odysseus' knees quaked. His spirit, too, numb with fear when he spoke to his own great heart. Wretched man, what becomes of me now, at last? I fear the nymph foretold it all too well. On the high seas, she said, before I can reach my native land, I'll fill my cup of pain. And now, look, it all comes to pass. What monstrous cause King Zeus, crowning the whole wide heaven black, churning the seas in chaos, gales blasting, raging around my head from every quarter. My death plunge in a flash, it's certain now. 3, 4 times blessed my friends in arms who died on the plains of Troy those years ago, serving the sons of Atreus to the end. Which he's saying basically here is like, man, I wish I'd fucking died at Troy than have to deal with this. Don't blame him. Don't blame him. Since Odysseus knows Poseidon is pissed at him, why did he blame Zeus? Also, would Zeus be mad that Odysseus blamed him? So the reason, oh, sorry, you meant Odysseus knows Poseidon is mad. I can speak. Odysseus talks about Zeus and the weather. We're going to see later, actually, that Odysseus has had frequently bad weather on this whole journey. It's a major part of the Odyssey, is the shitty weather he has to deal with, and usually you say it must be related to Zeus, as it's the heir of the heavens. You just kind of assume if there's a storm, it's related to Zeus, unless it is specified otherwise. In this case, as much as it's the sea, well, the last time he had bad weather on the sea, it was Zeus going thunder time, as I jokingly like to say. So his first mind is to jump to Zeus as opposed to Poseidon, because let's also remember that he has never interacted with Poseidon in the Odyssey. He never does. Like, this is the only air quotes interaction we really have between Poseidon and Odysseus, and they're not even speaking to each other or properly interacting. It's one of those big changes that I noted is done in Epic, and I quite liked in Epic, because in the Odyssey, Poseidon is causes so many problems for Odysseus, but they never interact. So when Odysseus also says Zeus, it's an element of go to the top of the food chain, assume whatever's happening has essentially kind of been okayed by Zeus and something's happening. He's just going like, who's controlling the weather? It's probably Zeus. Let's just go to the top of the food chain. It was Mr. Thunder Thighs himself. And Zeus would not be angry about this. We had Zeus open talking about how like the humans blame us for all sorts of things, like saying, oh, it must be the gods causing bad weather. That's pretty minor. That's not really like blaming them for anything. It's just acknowledging the gods can control the weather, and hey, sometimes it sucks. Yes, Odysseus is literally like, oh, what now? Yeah, pretty much. But he did say, like, if I'm gonna die out here, okay, bring it on. But this is notably, again, something that is brought up a lot in the Odyssey, is like how dangerous these seas are, how shit the weather can be, how hard it is to sail. This is on a different level of, like, scary fucking seas. Like, there's a reason Homer is making it so damn dramatic. It's like, I jokingly just call it the Sea of Death, is like what Poseidon is turning up for him. He does know he's pissed off Poseidon, but again, when you think weather, you're usually immediately gonna go think to Zeus. Pepper Fizzy. Also feels like a general of the gods blaming since Zeus is top dog. Yeah, again, he just kind of in general, you say, oh, it must be Zeus, because he's the top of the food chain. As opposed to specifically saying it's Poseidon. It would also be really dangerous if you specifically blamed a god like Poseidon when in fact it was Zeus, because then that god who you're blaming might get really fucking pissed at you for singling them out. But if you kind of say Zeus, it's almost like a royal we. You're kind of safer. When again you're just saying, God, this weather is shit. I think the goddess told everything like it will be, but she told you to get back home in the end. Is he not believing the sticks, though? They're what here? He's saying, Calypso had said earlier, like, you're bound to face more pain. Let me back up a little bit. I can find what she said specifically, even though I hate reading her. She said, what pains are fated to fill your cup before you reach that shore. So he knew he was gonna have some issues before he got home, Mariamna. So he's assuming, oh, is this what she was talking about? Sure, pain, but not death. Now he's believing he will die. Well, that's just being out on the ocean. So, yeah. He's just going further. He's a bit of a pessimist at this point, kind of. Can you blame him? Zeus is the royal we. He really kind of is. Does Hades have an opinion on Odysseus? Akari, not that we know of, no. He never interacts with Hades. Hades does not appear in this story. I don't think Hades gives a shit. Hades is usually not super involved with anything that's going on outside of the underworld. He's just like, I got enough to deal with. I don't need to worry about what's going on up there because they're coming back down here. Does Hades even really exist in this version? As a character, I mean, you assume, yes, he does. He doesn't appear, but not all of the gods do appear in the Odyssey. So Hades is essentially like the manager of the underworld. That's his dominion. He's lord of it. He's a little busy. Except for those idiots who mess with his wife. Yeah, Theseus and Alcinous. So I guess, yeah, Hades, obviously he exists. He's here. He's just not going to feature in the story because there's no reason to feature him. Yeah, living mortals aren't Hades' problems until they die. Anyway. Where was he? Serving the sons of Atreus to the end. Would to God I died there too and met my fate that day. The Trojans, swarms of them, hurled at me with bronze spears, fighting over the corpse of proud Achilles. A hero's funeral then, my glory spread by comrades. Now what a wretched death I'm doomed to die. Cleos, We're talking about Kleos. It is the foundation of really this hero culture in the Greek mythology is Kleos, this glory, and how his legacy would have been spread by if he died defending the corpse of Achilles. Huge glory for him. So, and this is like a little nod to what is something you'll know if you read the Iliad, is that it was not unusual for, especially if you killed people who died and their corpses were on the battlefield, those bodies would get stripped, mainly of their arms and their armor. I mean, why not? Especially if you kill somebody who's got really, really good armor, you want it. It's a very famous moment in that we know it happens obviously on all sides, but famously in the Iliad, one moment of note is Hector, after killing Patroclus, strips him of the arms and armor that he's wearing. This was a very common practice. It was not seen as doing anything disrespectful. It's just common. And he took it, which was why Achilles had to get a new set. Can the top dog gods like Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, or Hades be patron gods? Soren. Patron, like of heroes? You mean? Kind of in the way that like Athena is a patron god of Odysseus, and how a lot of them tend to patron and favor mortals? Yes, actually very famously, it's Hera who shows a lot of support to Jason in Jason and the Argonauts. She's kind of one of the main gods that really supports him until he fucks it up royally, and then she's so done with him. So yes, they can be. They don't often though, as we would say, like the top dogs, the children of Kronos, if we will, don't usually. But yes, they totally can. And again, a good example is Hera with Jason. Very famously does. Now, what Achilles does after to Hector, that is disrespectful. Oh, Book Dragon. Yeah, no. When we get to Iliad Book Club, when we get to that point, we will have a long discussion on what happens, because Achilles goes to the point that even the Greeks were like, what the? Like, they were not with Achilles in that moment. They were like, too far. Too far. Too fucking far. What he does is horrifying. And it's meant to be horrifying. It would have been horrifying to the Greeks, and it's speaking to the level of rage that he's at. Yeah, what he did is a huge taboo. Absolutely. Yeah, there's lots of... The Iliad is fun. I can't wait till when we're done with the Odyssey and we go into the Iliad. The Iliad is so fun. It's so much drama. Oh, no worries, Soren. That's a totally valid question to have. Scamandreas. Yeah, like, dude, you crossed the line 2 miles ago. What the fuck? Yeah, true. Doesn't Zeus call Hector his favorite or something? Does that count as being a patron? Shadow28, not necessarily as being a patron, but it is noted that Zeus, while technically neutral, lots of air quotes here, in the Trojan War, did seem to favor the Trojans a bit more, and he very much liked Hector. I mean, Hector, even by the Greeks, is described pretty positively. I mean, they talk about Hector, he's brave Hector, he's noble, he's honorable. He is kind of everything a proper hero is meant to be. So, like, the Greeks, honestly, as much as they're like, yeah, we're in conflict, but we don't, like, hate Hector. He's doing what he has to do. Like, he's defending his kingdom, his city-state, his people. He's doing his job, but we honestly, outside of us being on the other side of a conflict, we got no beef with Hector. So Hector was a very noble character. I mean, highly contrasted with Paris. Nobody liked Paris, not even the Trojans. Is Hades a patron god to any hero, Jesse? No. Hades really does not interact with the upper world, if you call it, the human, the mortal world. He pretty much, his only major moment truly is that bit with Persephone, the most famous thing. And I think he's in some versions of the story of Sisyphus, he's sort of involved, but outside of that, he really does not, and like, again, the Titanomachy and stuff like that, he just does not interact with that world up there. He's too busy. He just chills down in the underworld and he's totally fine. Yeah, Hector was pretty solid. Painful death, but also coward, as opposite as Kleos as it can be. Oh, Mariana, are those the descriptions of Paris? Yeah. Exactly. Nobody liked Paris, not even the Trojans. Like, frequently Priam and Hector basically tell Paris to, you are so lucky you're pretty, shut the fuck up. Like, they cannot stand him. And yes, no, Helen didn't like Paris. She only went with him because Aphrodite basically magicked her mind to go with him. She didn't get a choice. It's part of why the whole thing blows up the way it does. Can be perfect because he's born to the wrong kingdom. Yeah. I guess Heracles kind of favored by Zeus, but I guess that's not patronage. He's kind of favored by Zeus, but not really. Zeus actually doesn't interfere too much when it comes to Heracles because obviously Heracles is notably hated by Hera, and Hera causes him so many problems up until the point where they need his help, and as he's dying, they bring him up to Olympus. And it is Hera who even offers her daughter Hebe, this goddess of eternal youth, to Heracles in marriage when they make him essentially divine. So, like, he's a child. A lot of these children of Zeus don't necessarily get a lot of his support. They have, like, bonus points basically for being a child of Zeus, but it's not like he's actively helping them. Zeus does not usually actively interfere in much of anything when it comes to the mortals. Again, he sends prophecies and he talks, and he might send other gods to do things, but he himself not usually moving from his chair. Everybody hates Chris, but needs to be everybody hates Paris. Yeah. Priam is basically, Paris is the Ares of Troy. No wonder Ares was on the side of the Trojans. Well, to be fair, he was on the side of the Trojans because Aphrodite was, because her son Aeneas is there in Troy, and obviously because of the whole Paris thing. But that is a funny joke, Mary, and I do like it. I love Alexandros as a name. Not gonna lie, my brain just dissociates Paris. Yeah, don't blame you, Mariana. Mariana, do not. People love to blame Helen and slut shame her, forgetting my girl was essentially kidnapped. Or Helen of Troy. Yo, Maria, were you here for last week's book club? Because we meet Menelaus and Helen of Troy, and I had like a whole moment to stop and go, we need to talk about Helen and how fucking awesome she is. She's been through enough. She's awesome. Athena, and notably in one labor, Helios. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Giving up Paris would have broken some divine law. I don't know, ABC, but in terms of even just mortal conflict, Helen was screwed. Like, she couldn't leave because she's in a no-win scenario. She's just screwed. And frankly, everything worked out in her favor. And her and Menelaus have essentially an unremarkable marriage beyond the whole thing with the Trojan War. They seem to have a happy, unremarkable marriage, which unremarkable is our favorite word when it comes to relationships in Greek mythology. Unremarkable means, oh, thank God it didn't end in disaster, because so many of them do. They seem to have had a pretty happy marriage. I mean, and she chose Menelaus as her husband to be her husband from all of the suitors who came to court her, and a lot of them did. But she chose Menelaus, notably because he was said to have a really good personality, and I'm like, girl, I get it. She chose one, she's like, I think he'll be kind of the nicest and the best one to go with. And they seem to have been reasonably happy together. Again, the Trojan War being a big exception, but she had no choice in that matter. Yes, Mary, I do mean a Kobayashi Maru. 0 days since the last Star Trek reference, always. Yes, Helen of Sparta. That would be her true name. She is Helen of Sparta. Could Helen not sneak out because there were no secret tunnels like when Aphrodite was not there? The problem, Shadow, is if she sneaks out with the Greeks, it's not like the Greeks are going to just leave. It's a good question. I'm not saying that's a bad question, but the Greeks aren't just going to leave. Like, yes, they're there to take Helen, but it has also now become a conflict where they want to sack Troy. They have been there for so long. If they just leave, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, the glory isn't quite as high as if they take Troy and sack it. But if this conflict keeps going and say somehow the Greeks lose, well, then the Trojans know she left. So then she's doubly screwed, because then it's like, oh, we took you in and all this, and then you left us for them? Like, she would suffer then if the Greeks lost. So it's a lot of she really is in the worst possible situation, and it's not even one of her own making, and that sucks. I think it's interesting that OG sources are so much more respectful to Helen and Odysseus and their traumas than a lot of modern interpretations. Do you think that's the Roman influence? Marissa, I would not be surprised if it's the Roman influence, because the Romans notably do not like Helen, and they really don't like Odysseus, especially because they believe themselves as descended from Aeneas, who's a character from Troy. I mean, if anybody here has read the Aeneid, they describe he is cruel Ulysses, cruel Ulysses, a coward, deceitful. They do not like any of the Greeks. They basically shit on the Greeks any chance they get, which is so interesting, again, when you talk about the Greeks and how they talk about the Trojans. Paris being the one exception, totally understandably, again, nobody likes Paris, but they're very respectful in the way that they talk about these other Trojans. Priam is a fantastic king who's in a terrible situation. Hector is a great hero and they respect him. So the Greeks are like, yo, we're all messy as shit, but honestly, if we weren't in this situation, bruh, we get you. We're just sorry, it's kind of the job here. Did Helen ever try to ask Zeus for help, or did he just want to stay neutral? Pepper Fuzzy, she did not ever ask Zeus for help, and he did just want to stay neutral. A part of the whole thing, this all came about because of that whole nonsense with the golden apple, and he stepped back I am not getting involved. The one time Zeus was smart and went, I'm not getting involved in that one. So again, Helen really stuck. She's in the worst situation. She has like the worst situation ever, and this is not even the first time she's essentially been kidnapped. She was kidnapped as a kid. Again, we talk about this in book 4. We talk a lot more about Helen because we meet her. People at Paris dartboard. Really? Romans, the house of Atreus of the ancient world. Yeah, basically. Except bitchier and whinier. None of that Troy BS. Oh, gee, yeah, no, the Troy movie, like there are parts of it, it does so well. And then there are parts of it where I just stare at it in confusion. And their treatment of Helen was awful. Benioff, I'm gonna come at you for that treatment of Helen, which makes me so mad. I thought Zeus favored Troy though. He did. It seems. He leaned more towards Troy, but officially he was neutral. He officially was like, I'm staying out of it. But he did seem to favor Troy. He said, yeah, cool, but we need that Kleos to the Trojans. Yeah, the Achaeans, the Greeks were just like, we need that Kleos. By that point especially, like at what point is she gonna leave? And even if we were to say, is it during the Iliad? Okay, well that's year 10, that's the final year. Again, she's kind of doomed. No, he was not happy about seeing his daughter kidnapped, but he's a girl dad very specifically really with his divine children more than any of his human children. He's a girl dad very much with Athena and very much with Artemis. Kind of outside of that, he doesn't care that much. Anyway. Oh, hi, Kiba, C-Y-B-A. I always never know how to pronounce your name in my head, even Chiba. Sometimes I've said it in my head, which I don't know why. But Kiba, thank you. I'm doing well. It's so good to see you here. The fact that in the Troy film, both Menelaus and Agamemnon die at Troy was a big offense. Oof, don't. Troy has its moments where it does things so well. And it like does, and it makes some adaptive changes I actually really like. But then yeah, it does stuff like that where I'm like, what the fuck? He was the least neutral party. Birchwood, yeah. Zeus is the least neutral party. Ideal Romans were essentially citizen farmers, meanwhile the Greeks valued thinkers and philosophers, etc. River Roth, it depends. Actually, a lot of these Greek heroes here would have been closer to farmers than they would have been to the thinkers and the philosophers. The idea of the thinkers and the philosophers comes specifically out of the classical age and really specifically the classical Athenian school of thought. And a lot of actually what you see in that classical era is rebuking against stuff that happened in the Archaic period, which before that was the Dark Ages. Which before that, you get the Bronze Age. So fun fact, a lot of the scholarship talks about like, what does the Trojan War represent? If you think of like mythology and its reflection of like feelings and thoughts and what's happening in the world around it, it's the downfall of Bronze Age Greece before they were plunged in what gets called the Dark Ages. Before then you get the Archaic Age and then the Classical Age, and then Classical into Hellenistic. So it's like a very short windows of time in there. But yeah, the Romans started to value the classical Athenian school of thought, and they were valued as teachers, but often not as much more beyond that, which is ironic because again, a lot of these heroes would have been closer to like farmers and agriculture and working with their hands and doing all these things. And so it's like sad that the Romans, you know, just kind of like took all of these other aspects of Greece and threw it out, but it is the Romans. Oh, your laptop barely survived being thrown when Menelaus died. Look. I was in the theater for that one, and I just sat back in confusion. Troy was still a better film than Alexander, though. It's a more enjoyable film than Alexander, for sure. Alexander's greatest crime is questionable casting in places and just kind of being boring, which is sad because there's parts of it where it's like people will say like the battles are depicted reasonably accurately and there's cool stuff in there, but it's like the script is just dull. Which is unfortunate, which is, again, it is hard to do adaptations of history or stuff like that because you have to balance, like, how true are you being versus what's the good story. It's a tightrope. Trust me, when I studied adaptation, it was always fun to think about. Ahmad, who is your favorite Greek hero? Mine's Odysseus. Oh, I don't know who my favorite is. Like, I would say Odysseus and Perseus are like two faves in terms of, like, that have their own really big story with them, because obviously lots of heroes that are there in the Trojan War like I like as well, but I think Perseus and Odysseus are kind of my two that like I like reading their story. It's really fun. Yes, sorry, we're getting stunlocked with discussion. Perseus did get the good ending. He's one of the only ones who did. Yeah, not in the theaters. I did. Oh, the 50 sword and sandal flicks are fun. Okay, sorry, we are getting better armory details. Pepper Fizzy, it's true. The armor in Troy looks fabulous. Like, they went to try and make it look a bit more, with the exception of Achilles, but they're doing it to make him stand out. Anywho, sorry, we are getting sidetracked. Back here. We have to get to Odysseus. getting in the water. He gonna get in the water, guys. But here we have him, again, was talking about Cleos. I wish I'd died in battle, gotten those full honors, as opposed to dying wretchedly out on the sea. Not as dramatic and glorious an ending. At that, a massive wave came crashing down on his head, a terrific onslaught, spinning his craft round and round. He was thrown clear of the decks, the steering oar wrenched from his grasp, which again, let's remember, they didn't have steering wheels. You were using your oar to do all of the maneuvering. Sailing on the seas was scary, guys. And in one lightning attack, the brawling gale winds struck full force, snapping the mast midshaft and hurling the sail and sail yard far across the sea. He went under a good long while. No fast way out, no struggling up from under the giant waves' assault. His clothing dragged him down, divine Calypso's gifts. But at last he fought his way to the surface, spewing bitter brine, streams of it pouring down his head. But half drowned as he was, he'd not forget his craft. He lunged after her through the breakers, laying hold and huddling amidships, fled the stroke of death. Pell-mell the rollers tossed her along the down current, wild as the north wind, tossing thistle along the fields at high harvest, dry stalks clutching each other tightly. So the gale winds tumbled her down the sea, this way, that way. Now the south wind flinging her over the north to sport with. Now the east wind giving her up to the west to harry and on. But someone saw him. Calypso's gifts dragging him down. But someone saw him. Cadmus's daughter with lovely ankles, Ino, a mortal woman once with human voice and called Leucothea. Now she lives in the sea salt depths, esteemed by all the gods she deserves. Of course, Homer's identifying someone by how lovely her ankles are. Feet and legs, guys. Feet and legs. Lovely ankles, all about it. Okay, let's talk about Ino. Here also called Leucothea. So Ino was a daughter of Cadmus, and a sister of Semele, who was the mother of Dionysus, very famously. So, she helped actually to kind of like suckle and raise Dionysus after he was born, you know, since Semele died. Takav King, thank you. It was fun to be in Danny's video. And yes, the Greek love their feet. They really do. Why did he love Odysseus' thighs so much? Shadow, it's the eternal question. He's just a thigh man. What can we say? The thing about Ino was that she helped essentially to raise Dionysus after Semele's death because she said, Zeus, I want to see you in your full glory. And he'd sworn by the river Styx. Oops. So she went kapoof, but we managed to save Dionysus. Well, Hera found out. She wasn't happy. So she decided to drive Ino's husband, named Atamas, insane, basically as punishment for Ino helping to care for Dionysos. Oh, Takav King, thank you. I'm happy to be your favorite epic reactor. That makes me so happy. Thank you. And I'm happy you're here in book club. We're having lots of fun here. So Atamas was driven completely insane. This is not unusual. Hera has done this before, notably Heracles. So actually she drove Atamas so insane he actually slew one of his own sons in this madness he was in. And Ino was like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. How do I get out of here? How do I get out of here? So in order to escape her essentially like frenzied husband, she actually ran off to like an edge and leapt into the sea, and she had her son Melicertes in her arms when she did this, and they would have both died, but like really out of pity for what was going on, to watch a mother grab her child and run into the sea, and to like death is better than what's going on there. It was seen as like it was tragic, and the gods looked on that with pity. And basically turned them both essentially into sea gods out of pity. So Melicertes becomes known as Palaemon, and Ino becomes known as Leucothea, and I do believe the meaning of her name is something akin to like white goddess. Again, my people who know the Greek in the chat can correct me. Not just death, but ocean death. Yeah, because drowning is a horrible way to go. That's essentially what she's doing. And they were just like, oh, that's, yikes, that's not good. And also, again, she had helped raise Dionysus, so there's that. Callisphoros, I know now, I wonder if Percy's translation, beautiful ankled all in one is a joyous mistake or on purpose. It's funny, white goddess, yeah, yay, Mariana, I'm glad. I was gonna say, I usually, like, if I get notes on what stuff means, I keep true to what I'm being told it means. It probably means I read it somewhere, but I like that people here know and can correct me here. But yes, I know, I'll probably keep calling her I know, but she would by this point be known as Leokotea, is just sitting there going, man, what the fuck's happening up there? Could you do in the future a video showing your books in the back? Yes, I do plan I will have to do a bookshelf tour. I absolutely will. So, I know. She pitied Odysseus, tossed, tormented so. She broke from the waves like a sheer water on the wing, lit on the wreck, and asked him kindly, ah, poor man, why is the god of earthquakes so dead set against you, strewing your way with such a crop of troubles? But he can't destroy you, not for all his anger. Just do as I say. You seem no fool to me. Strip off those clothes and leave your craft for the winds to hurl, and swim for it now, you must. Strike out with your arms for landfall there, Phaeacian land, where destined safety waits. Here, take this scarf, tie it around your waist. It is immortal. Nothing to fear now, neither pain nor death. But once you grasp the mainland with your hands, untie it quickly and throw it back into the wine-dark sea, far from the shore. But you turn your head away. Translation, what did you do to piss off Poseidon? Yeah, she's like, what did you do, brah? Ah, Dog of King, thank you, no problem. Yes, I will be doing a bookshelf tour. Get in the comments. Birch with Vampire, yes. Why does he have to strip, though? Does the scarf become less affected if he's fully clothed? Maria, potentially, but also we did read earlier that these clothes he's wearing from Calypso are literally weighing him down in the water. So he's got to get rid of those because he can't swim as well with them. Why does Odysseus need to look away? Don't look upon the goddess when she's grabbing her shawl. He's likely probably not even looking right at her in this moment. He's just hearing her. Yes, stripping does solve every problem, Hematus. We like getting Odysseus down to his birthday suit. All the time. Oh my god. Not all the time. Here and notably later in the story, but yes. But Clover, that is why he needs to look away. Kind of similar to, like, if you know the story of Artemis and Actaeon, he gazed upon the goddess when bathing. It could be that she's gonna be in a reasonable state of undress and he should not be looking. It's Homer, we know why he needs to get naked, because, but yes. With that, the goddess handed him the scarf and slipped back in the heavy breaking seas like a sheer water once again, and a dark, heaving billow closed above her. But battle-weary Odysseus weighed two courses, deeply torn, probing his fighting spirit. Oh no, I fear another immortal weaves a snare to trap me, urging me to abandon ship. Which again, he never takes things at face value. But also again, let's look at his last experience for 7 years was Calypso. His distrust is a little understandable. He's been a little messed up. I won't. Not yet. The shore's too far away. I glimpsed it myself where she says refuge waits. No, here's what I'll do. It's what seems best to me. As long as the timbers cling and joints stand fast, I'll hold out aboard her and take a whipping. Once the breakers smash my craft to pieces, then I'll swim. No better plan for now. But just as Odysseus thrashed things out, Poseidon, god of the earthquake, launched a colossal wave. Terrible, murderous, arching over him, pounding down on him, hard as a windstorm, blasting piles of dry, parched chaff, scattering flying husks, so the long planks of his boat were scattered far and wide. But Odysseus leapt aboard one timber and, riding it like a plunging racehorse, stripped away his clothes, divine Calypso's gifts, and quickly tying the scarf around his waist, he dove headfirst in the sea, stretched his arms, and stroked for life itself. But again the mighty god of earthquakes spied him, shook his head, and grumbled deep in his spirit. Go. After all you've suffered, rove your miles of sea. till you fall into the arms of people loved by Zeus. Even so, I can hardly think you'll find your punishments too light. And for those wondering, like, how does he suddenly let him go? I mean, one, he would recognize that Odysseus has got that magic scarf, but also this will be made more clear when we get to Polyphemus, because again, Polyphemus calls out to Poseidon with a very specific request for how he wants Odysseus to suffer. So Poseidon knows shit ain't good on Ithaca, and Odysseus is still in for more trouble. Yeah, why would I need this scarf when I have a perfectly serviceable raft? Cracking wood sounds from just off screen. Do Zeus and Poseidon have beef? I mean, they're brothers. They don't always get along. But no, he just knows that people who are more closely related or more kind of worshipful of Poseidon are likely to give him a harder time. Now, we're going to see how Odysseus deals with the Phaeacians because he realizes they are related to Poseidon, as opposed to if he went to ones who are related to other gods. There's a whole game kind of that's happening here. Yes, you see a peg. Yep, there she is. There she is. There's a peg. So did Poseidon know that Odysseus was on Calypso's island, and was that good enough suffering? He likely knew. It seems all the gods knew. He likely knew, and for him, he's just like, good, let him suffer. I'm mad. So for him, it's like he's suffering. He knows that Odysseus is, weeping, wants to go home, but he's not able to go home. And he's like, good, he's suffering while alive. That's what I wanted. Oh yeah, her legs behind her when she's doing a stretch. She drags her legs behind her. Odie really fucked up getting Poseidon to be his biggest op. Yeah, like the worst fucking god you could imagine. Yeah, so Poseidon at this point is like, you know what, my work here is done. I can back off. He's still gonna suffer. Peg, do you want up? Is that what we're coming for? We want uppies. Come here. Up, up. Up, up, up. She demands all pay. She does look at me. Yeah, she wants the uppies. Yeah, there we go. Oh, she's now relaxed. There we go. She does wait for permission for her uppies. She's always done that. I can't take credit for that little habit of hers. She does. I will get her a carrot in a moment. I will get you one, I promise. Peg's chair. It's true. This is true, Maria. Poseidon is the guy who sent a sea monster to kill his grandson Hippolytus just because Theseus asked him to kill him, no questions asked. It is true. Peg, the queen of the channel. It's true. All right. With that threat, he lashed his team with their long flowing manes, gaining Aegae port, where his famous palace stands. And yes, remember, Poseidon associated with horses. Hence, beautiful flowing manes. About what year did Homer set the whole story? Like how many years ago? This is being set at the tail end of the Bronze Age. So what would that be? Like, what's the end of the Bronze Age? I want to say a date, but I don't want to be wrong because I'm not a historian. Bronze Age of Greece. What's the Bronze Age? 3000 to 1050 BCE. Yeah, so like 1000 BCE, I guess you could want to say. Yeah. Kind of right about where this is supposed to be. End of the 1300 BCE? Maybe actually 1300, like 1200 I think is the number that gets thrown around. Yeah, around 1200 BCE. I think that's the number most people sort of agree on, but it's vague. It's left very vague, kind of on purpose. But Zeus's daughter Athena countered him at once. The rest of the winds she stopped right in their tracks, commanding them all to hush now, go to sleep, all but the boisterous north. She whipped him up, and the goddess beat the breakers flat before Odysseus, dear to Zeus, so he could reach the Phaeacians, mingle with men who loved their long oars, and escape his death at last. Yes, but now adrift on the heaving swells, 2 nights, 2 days, quite lost. Again and again the man foresaw his death. Then, when dawn with her lovely locks brought on the 3rd day, the wind fell in an instant. All glazed to a dead calm, and Odysseus, scanning sharply, raised high by a ground swell, looked up and saw it. Landfall just ahead. Joy, warm as the joy that children feel when they see their father's life dawn again, one who's lain on a sickbed racked with torment, wasting away slowly under some angry power's onslaught. Then what joy when the gods deliver him from his pains. Poseidon's like, fine, I gave him thalassophobia. I guess that's good enough, basically. So warm Odysseus' joy when he saw that shore, those trees, as he swam on, anxious to plant his feet on solid ground again. But just offshore, as far as a man's shout can carry, he caught the bottom of a heavy surf on jagged reefs, roaring breakers crashing down on an iron-bound coast, exploding in fury. The whole sea shrouded, sheets of spray, no harbors to hold ships, no roadstead where they'd ride, nothing but jutting headlands, rip-toothed reefs, cliffs. Odysseus' knees quaked and the heart inside him sank. He spoke to his fighting spirit, desperate, worse and worse. Now that Zeus has granted a glimpse of land beyond my hopes, now I've crossed this waste of water, the end in sight. There's no way out of the boiling surf. I see no way. Rugged reefs offshore, around them breakers roaring, above them a smooth rock face rising steeply. Look at the surge, too deep inshore, no spot to stand on my own two legs and battle free of death. If I clamber out, some big comber will hoist me, dash me against that cliff. My struggle's all a waste. If I keep on swimming down the coast, trying to find a sea beach, shelving against the waves, a sheltered cove, I dread it. Another gale will snatch me up and haul me back to the fish-infested sea, retching in despair. Or a dark power will loose some monster on me, rearing out of the waves, one of the thousands Amphitrite's breakers teem with. Well, I know the famous god of earthquakes hates my very name. So he knows Poseidon's mad at him. And Amphitrite is the wife of Poseidon. Very famously, like, queen of the sea. Odysseus is Jack Sparrow, dead mustache. Literally not, but yet Odysseus 12 seconds later. God damn it! Exactly. Just as that fear went churning through his mind, a tremendous roller swept him toward the rocky coast where he'd have been flayed alive, his bones crushed, if the bright-eyed goddess Pallas had not inspired him now. He lunged for a reef. He seized it with both hands and clung for dear life, groaning against the giant wave surged past, and so he escaped its force. But the breaker's backwash charged into him full fury and hurled him out to sea. Like pebbles stuck in the suckers of some octopus dragged from its lair, so strips of skin torn from his clawing hands stuck to the rock face. A heavy sea covered him over then and there. Unlucky Odysseus would have met his death against the will of fate, but the bright-eyed one inspired him yet again. Fighting out from the breakers, pounding toward the coast, out of danger he swam on, scanning the land, trying to find a sea beach shelving against the waves, a sheltered cove, and stroking hard he came abreast of a river's mouth, running calmly, the perfect spot, he thought. I see in these verses why you did have a lot of trouble on my goodbye. Free of rocks with a windbreak from the gales, as the current flowed, he felt the river's god and prayed to him in spirit. Hear me, Lord, whoever you are, I've come to you, the answer to all my prayers. Rescue me from the sea lord's curse. Even immortal gods will show a man respect whenever wanderer seeks their help. Like me, I throw myself upon your mercy, on your current now. I have suffered greatly. Pity me, Lord, your suppliant cries for help. So the man prayed, and the god stemmed his current, held his surge at once, and smoothing out the swells before Odysseus now, drew him safe to shore at the river's mouth. His knees buckled, massive arms fell limp. The sea had beaten down his striving heart. His whole body swollen, brine aplenty gushing out of his mouth and nostrils, breathless, speechless, there he lay, with only a little strength left in him. Deathly waves of exhaustion overwhelmed him now. but once he regained his breath and rallied back to life, at last he loosed the goddess's scarf from his body, dropped it into the flowing river out to sea, and a swift current bore it far downstream. And suddenly Ino caught it in her hands. Struggling up from the banks, she flung herself in the deep reeds. Struggling up from the banks, he flung himself in the deep reeds. He kissed the good green earth and addressed his fighting spirit, desperate still. Man of misery, what next? Is this the end? If I wait out a long, tense night by the banks, I fear the sharp frost and soaking dew together will do me in. I'm bone-weary, about to breathe my last, and a cold wind blows from a river on toward morning. What if I climb that slope, go for the dark woods, and bed down in the thick brush? What if I'm spared the chill, fatigue, and a sweet sleep comes my way? I fear wild beasts will drag me off his quarry. Yeah, man needs a nap. He needs a nap so badly. He is nearly drowned, and we've made this so dramatic. He very nearly just died. But this was the better course. It struck him now. He set out for the woods, and not far from the water found a grove with a clearing all around, and crawled beneath 2 bushy olives sprung from the same root, one olive wild, the other well-bred stock. No sodden, gusty winds could ever pierce them, nor could the sun's sharp rays invade their depths, nor could a downpour drench them through and through. So dense they grew together, tangling side by side. Odysseus crept beneath them, scraping up at once a good wide bed for himself with both hands. A fine litter of dead leaves had drifted in, enough to cover 2 men over, even 3, in the wildest kind of winter known to man. Long-enduring great Odysseus, overjoyed at the sight, bedded down in the midst and heaped the leaves around him, as a man will bury his glowing brand in black ashes, off on a lonely farmstead, no neighbors near, to keep a spark alive. No need to kindle fire from somewhere else. So great Odysseus buried himself in leaves, and Athena showered sleep upon his eyes. Sleep, in a swift wave, delivering him from all his pains and labors. Blessed sleep that sealed his eyes at last. So he nearly died, but he made it to the Phaeacians. So we know at this point he's essentially guaranteed to get home. He's got to do some stuff beforehand, but good Lord, he almost did not make it. No matter the version of Odysseus, he very much needs a therapy saga. It's rough. He finally has gotten out of Calypso. He's made it to the Phaeacians. So we're preview for the next couple books. We're going to be spending some time with the Phaeacians, kind of getting to know what's going on there, and then Odysseus will get to tell his story before we then eventually have to deal with Ithaca. So this is where we're going to be leading into what will eventually become the massive flashback part of the story, but we've got a couple more books meeting the Phaeacians and figuring out what they're about to get there. Does Odie know where exactly he ended up? He has, I believe, been told. He can only assume that's where he is, but he might not know that much about the Phaeacians as people. Again, he's in a lot of sort of seemingly uncharted waters. So even if he gets told, that's the Phaeacians, will likely mean nothing to him. So he's like, I don't know what that means, but it's not Calypso's island, and hopefully they don't want to kill me, so there you go. The olive trees seem significant. Yes. They are very linked often with Athena, famously with how Athens became named as it was. Can you explain that line 420? Gaining Agi port where his famous palace stands is supposed to mean. My brain can't decipher it. It's essentially saying that's where Poseidon went. That he has a very famous temple or palace to him that's in the port of that city. Agi. Maybe it's Agi. Maybe that's how it's pronounced. Somebody can correct me. So Clover, that's all it means. It's just saying, so Poseidon realized, I think my work here is done. Frankly, I don't need to do anymore. I'm gonna go kick it in a palace, a temple to me that's over here. That's all that means, Clover. is a metaphor for something, I'm not sure what, the part about one being wild and the other cultivated. That both, so what we get there, Lindsay Marie, is the idea that both man and myth, that, or like both nature, you could say the divine, and the created, aka that which is, you know, planted by a man, are all coming together to essentially help Odysseus. Like at this point, the universe is conspiring to make sure Odysseus gets home. Lindsay, if we were to take like the one wild and one cultivated, ultimately it takes both the work of some divine intervention and the help of mankind, which he will get from around him, to eventually get home. And we do know that Zeus is sad. He's gonna eventually get home with like tons of gifts and cool shit and all sorts of stuff. That's gonna happen here at the fight. That's not gonna happen for Calypso. And since this is our last stop before Ithaca, that's what you got. Poseidon gave one last middle finger to Odysseus before going away. Basically. Do we have any more questions either related to book 5 specifically or within the first 5 books? Let's try and limit ourselves so we don't keep spoiling ourselves. You mentioned in the beginning Pallas, and that Pallas is different to Pallas Athena. What exactly does Pallas mean? Like the meaning of the word, Jesse? Or what do I mean by it's a different Pallas, or how that relates to Athena? In terms of Pallas, as it relates to Athena, Pallas is a name. So Pallas was the name of a, I believe, grandchild, yes, of Poseidon, a daughter of Triton, who Athena essentially grew up with. Like they were childhood friends. So they grew up together, and she notably took Pallas as one of her epithets because of an incident that happened. I did mention this in a previous book club, but I don't mind saying it again here. They were basically having like a friendly sparring match, and Zeus was watching, and he kind of worried that Athena might lose, and so they're dueling with spears, and he basically throws down something that distracts Pallas. It's something like really shiny. I can't remember exactly. And Pallas gets distracted by it and was like, and so in that moment, Athena is actually thrusting her spear at her, and where normally Pallas would have readily dodged, she didn't, and Athena killed her, which is, it's sad, and it's nobody's fault. Yeah, he distracts her, and she lowers her guard, and Athena ends up killing her. And no, Poseidon and Triton are not mad at it, because you would say this is still in the context of, you know, friendly sparring, kind of mock combat. She won. But it very much upsets Athena. She's distressed by having done this, and so she decides, besides giving incredible like funerary honors to Pallas, she says, I'm taking her as my epithet. So she gets called Pallas Athena. She's forever linked with me. That is a great honor to Pallas. So this reasonably kind of minor goddess-ish type would not normally be getting an honor like this. But Athena is like, no, I'm doing this. This is an honor I'm bestowing upon her as having been my friend and in that moment my opponent, which is a huge deal. So that is part of why she gets called Pallas Athena. And that is who Pallas was. Clover, I have a question that's about the culture of the time, but not the Odyssey itself. Is that off topic enough? You'd prefer me to save it? You can ask the question, Clover. Go ahead. I'll do my best to answer. You might yet again give me a question where I'm not entirely sure. Line 515, is Odie talking to himself at this point? Lindsay, let me check 515. It's not too far back. 5, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The man of misery, what next? Is this the end? Yeah, he's talking to himself. He's talking to himself. Which is what he does a lot. As much as it says, like, always calling out saying, oh, Zeus, what next? He's talking to himself. Yes, I did sing for Danny. He had asked me in the initial email, like, it involves singing if you're okay with that. And I'm like, I'm okay with that. Why was it so dang difficult for Odysseus to get back? Didn't they know how to read the stars? I think you mentioned something that's in another book club, but I don't answer the stars thing. True, I did not talk about constellations. They did to a degree use the stars to navigate, but it was only navigating so much. They tried, but also one big thing that's important to know when we're gonna get to, we'll find out, see more when we get to that part of the Odyssey, is that they had really bad weather. They couldn't always see the stars because they were clouded over. The weather was so bad. Odysseus notes many times the weather sucked. It wasn't just the very specific excuse me, like moments with Helios's cattle. We just note that he gets bad weather from the start, so they get so they don't always know exactly where they are in the ocean. So even if they had like a certain direction based on the stars, if they're already pretty far off course, they're just sort of sailing further off course in a different direction. So Akari, that's why weather plays a big part in this, which we'll see when we get to the part of Odysseus telling his story. Yes, natural weather, god-influenced weather, and bad luck. Correct, Game Wizard. The victory was not on Athena's terms, so she's upset by that fact, and the fact her friend died. Correct. Everybody's coming from Danny's video. We're gonna watch it here in a bit, I promise. They had limited control over sailing. They were at the mercy of the elements. Yeah, Omen, correct. They very much were at the mercy of the elements. I know Autolycus was cackling when he named Odysseus. Oof, yeah, we're actually gonna hear that story, G. That is in the Odyssey. Yep, hey Matis, the Vikings really were notably phenomenal sailors. And also, let's remember, by the time we get there, sailing technology and all of that has gone leaps and bounds forward. But the Vikings were just like insanely good sailors. Like it's unreal how good they were. Yeah, the Great Yap, where Odysseus says, bet you're wondering how I got here. Yep, it is the Great Yap. The most famous parts of the Odyssey is Odysseus telling his own story, which is hilarious. Any more questions? I know, Clover, you're working on a question, unless you said it already, and for some reason I'm not seeing it. Ah, there we go. If someone managed to have an uneventful voyage home, would that affect someone's Kleos? They wouldn't have anything to prove themselves against, but possibly would speak to having the favor of a god. You know, Clover, that's a really good question. These journeys home across the sea are what is known as nostos or nostoi, and that is what Odysseus is on here. Now, part of the idea of the nostos is that you have adventures of some kind, and they can be minor. They don't have to be the most dramatic thing ever, but it's assumed that at some point you're gonna have some kind of notable adventure, just because sailing is dangerous and navigating the waters, even if you've got help from a god, is difficult. Like Nestor had what we would call a reasonably unremarkable nostos, but he still talks about shit weather that they had and stuff that happened. So it would generally kind of affect your Kleos, but not that much. It's more that you can gain more Kleos if you had a more dramatic voyage home versus if your voyage home was reasonably uneventful. It's not so much like you lose Kleos, more that do you gain as much? Not so much. And that's just because it was just sort of guaranteed sailing home, you were gonna have some sort of difficulty, no matter what it was, whether it just be a bad day of weather. That's still an adventure in its own, because that's how scary sailing was. Yeah, the Mediterranean Sea is already dangerous today. Imagine back then. Yeah. True. Nestor's Kleos is the fact that he's lived so much. Introverts are, yeah, that's not wrong. And Nestor's Kleos comes from the fact he has lived so long that he is still in his prime. He is ruling Pylos. He has not put one of his sons to take over and rule, which tells that Nestor is still in his prime, which, given his age, is insane. It's insane that he is still kicking the way that he is. Because, a lot of us here probably have heard the famous riddle of the Sphinx, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 at night. The idea that when you are old and need to use a cane, it's oh, you're out of your prime. A lot of the times in that kind of hero culture, in a way that was sort of looked down upon, and you would be expected at that point where you should be deferring to the next generation who are in their prime physically. The fact that Nestor ain't on those 3 legs, that man is old, and he's still killing it. It's just he's an anomaly. And honestly, Nestor has seen things. The man was an Argonaut, let's not forget. Nestor doesn't even have a cane. He wouldn't walk with a cane, because that would be a sign that maybe you can't walk totally firm. He walks on his 2 legs. He does not need that third assistance. What about women in their Cleos? Are there any female heroes besides the Amazon? Jesse, the only real female hero of note is known as Atalanta. She features very much in the story of Meleager and the Caledonian Boar. And you are right that there are the Amazons who feature in the stories of Heracles and some others. But beyond that, there really aren't any female heroes. It's pretty much just female goddesses. But the real big one of the kind of exception, the one big one of note is Atalanta. Women would have their own elements to them. Again, let's remember this was a highly patriarchal society and pretty sexist, so not much you can do about that. But yes, Atalanta is kind of the only female hero of note. Peg, are you trying to leave? What do you want, sweetheart? Oh, big snorts. Peg has very big opinions now, and I'm trying to, oh, okay, you want to lie back down. Sometimes I can't quite figure out what she wants when she sits up like that. But yeah, if you're looking for a female hero, Atalanta. The sad thing is Diomedes barely being mentioned. Yo, there's a fabulous video that just came out recently and I watched, which is over on the channel called History Hit. It has a professor of, I think, ancient, specifically Greek warfare at Oxford. Oh, you want to leave? Sorry, hold on. She wants to get down. There you go, sweetheart. Named Roll something that I'm going to mispronounce with a K. Where essentially it was agree to disagree, and it was him and one of the other people from that channel sitting down, and they were posing sort of questions, and it would be do you agree, disagree, and how much did they agree or disagree? And one of the things that got asked involved is Odysseus is the greatest of the Greek heroes, and it was do you agree or disagree, and give your explanations and reasonings. And another stuff involving Achilles would beat Heracles in a fight. No, he wouldn't. Fun fact. But one thing they talk about when they talk about who is the greatest of the hero, you have to kind of explore that question, and Diomedes actually gets mentioned. He makes some really good points about Diomedes in there. Oh, hey, Matus, you've seen that. Yeah, no, this particular professor, I just call him Roll K because I know I'll butcher his last name and I don't want to. He's super fun. If you find any of his videos on YouTube, I highly recommend. Ancient, I believe specifically Greek warfare is kind of his specific area of academia, but he has a way of delivering a whole lot of really great academic information, and it's just really entertaining in the way that he does it. I thought the whole thing with Achilles was the reason the Greeks could win. Yes, he's a very good hero, but Heracles is the hero. Had Heracles been there, by this point Heracles is no longer around, Heracles would have kicked the shit out of everybody. It's not even a contest. Achilles is the greatest of the Greek warriors, at the time. But he would not have beaten Heracles. What is his name? You know what? I'm going to look it up so then I can paste it here in the chat, because there's no way I'm going to say it correctly, and it makes me feel bad. Oh, Lord. Yep, it is a name that I would butcher, and as somebody who's had a name that's been butchered constantly since I was young. Oh, come on. Copy. Sometimes my keyboard hates me. Really? You're gonna make me have to spell it out? Okay, fine. God, let's hope yeah, thank you. Oh my God, let's hope I spelled that right. If you were to just put that name into YouTube, at least in my case, it's the second video that comes up. The historians argue over ancient Greek theories. It's a really fun, it's almost 6-minute video, but it's so fun. I mean, I'm very nerdy. It definitely speaks to me, but some of the questions are really fun. Again, one's leading to mythology, Odysseus is the greatest hero, or Heracles v Achilles. And he's got a bunch of stuff, a bunch of videos. He pops up in a lot of things, and he's just very entertaining, but obviously knows his shit. So there's an expert, an actual very much accredited expert. I mean, you do not get to teach at Oxford if you do not know your shit. Heracles versus a group of other Greek heroes would be the 100 men versus gorilla. Yeah, basically. For patriarchal societies in the previously mentioned Vikings, there was surprisingly equal to name 2 men and women in the Viking society. Not perfect, but better than others during our time. Yeah, Hal, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. I'm not gonna argue at that point. You're right. Yeah, you can see why I'd have trouble pronouncing that, because I'm oh no. That's why I say, okay. Why do the Romans say Hercules? It's just an effective Latinization, especially because Heracles has to do with Hera being part of it, but they don't have Hera, they have Juno. So that's why the name just ends up getting Latinized. A lot of the names of the heroes and such will get Latinized. I mean, famously, you can kind of look at Achilles as the proper way to pronounce his name, I believe, would be Achilleus, as opposed to Achilles. I mean, you'll hear me flip-flop between the two ways. And even with Heracles, I sometimes call him Hercules, and it's just like this. The Romans like to change names. It's just the thing they do. And again, one part of it is that his name is linked to Hera, but they don't have Hera, and they're trying to adopt him as being more like, that's our hero, and it's like, oh my god, rolling our eyes at the Romans. Copying the homework all the time. And Odysseus, yes, is called Ulysses by the Romans. So if ever you see something famously, I mean, James Joyce wrote his very interesting novel Ulysses, which is basically takes the structure of the Odyssey, but he writes it in his own way. Or if you ever read the Aeneid, you will see Odysseus called Ulysses in that. Yeah. Oh, is it a Dutch name? I knew. I was like, oh, it is somewhere up there in the sea of names that I will butcher. Okay, so it is Dutch. But yeah, no, he's great. I always thought Heracles came after Achilles because the Disney movie. Heracles is absolutely before Achilles. So let's. So if you think of the admittedly very messy timeline of the heroes, Achilles, Odysseus, all these people, that generation, their children is basically the last generation. But really, these heroes of the Trojan War are the last generation because their children don't really go on to do anything too much of note. Not to the level of the other heroes, which again speaks to this idea that the Trojan War is this sort of mythological representation of the downfall of Bronze Age Greece, leading into the Dark Ages. There's just no more after it. It's the death of really the heroes.